Welcome to the Elevate Your Leadership podcast series with U.S. Navy Special Operations veteran, CEO, and hockey fanatic Bob Pizzini. Bob discusses leadership, success, failure, defining moments, and hard lessons learned with guests who are intentional in their approach to leadership. Leadership is a perishable skill. Use it or lose it. In this series, entrepreneurs, industry executives, academics, public figures, and other highly effective professionals share their formulas for success with you.
Welcome, everybody, to this episode of the Elevate Your Leadership podcast with me, your host, Bob Pizzini. Hopefully, you've listened to the podcast before, and you know that my whole purpose with this podcast is to bring value to you and your organization. It's not entertainment, it's value. Value because I have guests on who have accomplished great things in their lives, and they have great lessons and stories to share with us. And I get people from across the spectrum. I've had an astronaut. I've had several Navy SEALs, Navy EOD techs. I've had the executive director of the YWCA, and on and on and on. I just have incredible guests. And the point is to bring value to you. And today's guest is unique, and this is going to be a long episode, folks, because today's guest, Josh, and I have so much in common and so much to share in terms of our military time and our effort and our endeavors to heal and to continue on in the private sector, to thrive in the private sector, and to help other veterans thrive in the private sector. So I'm really excited about this, and this is going to be a long episode. And we are going to have to take a pee break somewhere coming up here. So here we go. As always, I'm going to read the bio to set up the guest and really capture your interest. Sergeant First Class retired Josh Lindstrom is my guest today. Josh led an impressive career as a U.S. Army infantryman and Green Beret, deploying 5 times for more than 3 years to both Iraq and Afghanistan during the global war on terror, GWAT. Sergeant First Class Lindstrom was awarded 2 Bronze Stars for combat service and a Purple Heart for injuries he suffered when an improvised explosive device, IED, struck his vehicle in Logar, Afghanistan in 2012. Operating as a weapons sergeant on a U.S. Army Special Forces Operational Detachment Alpha, or what we call an ODA, which I've served on a few times, allowed Josh to gain unique perspective and experience in the finer points of unconventional warfare, UW, mission planning, crisis leadership, and resilience. During his service, Josh earned qualifications as a parachutist, pathfinder, jump master, sniper, and completed the Special Forces Advanced Targeting Reconnaissance, Target Acquisition Exploitation Techniques course. So Sephardic? Yep. Okay, and I did that course. I did pre-Sephardic out in Japan. Josh also earned the Expert Infantryman's Badge, the Combat Infantryman's Badge, the Combat Action Badge, the coveted Special Forces tab, and the right to wear the Green Beret. And folks, this is a big deal, if you haven't already gathered that. After leaving military service, Josh became an adaptive sports athlete and coach, winning the individual archery open category in the U.S. military's Warrior Games and a gold medal in international competition individual archery at the Invictus Games in Toronto, Canada in 2017. During this period, Josh earned an associate's degree from Fayetteville Technical Community College and a bachelor's degree from Regent University, my alma mater for my bachelor's as well.
That's cool.
He started a small business, and he coached several Special Operations Command Warrior Games archery team, all while tirelessly advocating for his fellow wounded veterans. Josh has been featured anonymously in a book regarding resiliency, and he has participated in panel discussions for medical providers treating combat wounded traumatic brain injury patients. Luckily, I've benefited from that treatment, as well as founding a 501c3 nonprofit organization called Blastology, the Blastology Foundation. We're going to have to talk about why you came up with the name, the Blastology Foundation, to help ensure that those wounded in combat receive the proper recognition and treatment for blast-related TBI, traumatic brain injuries. In 2024, Josh earned his Juris Doctorate degree from Regent University in Virginia Beach Also a school that I'm very familiar with and the show is very familiar with. In his spare time, Josh is an enthusiastic but slightly underperforming golfer and drummer. I have the same two shortcomings. He is married to his lovely wife of 20 years, Christine, and is father to two children, Annika and Finn. Josh, welcome to the Elevate Your Leadership podcast.
Thank you so much for having me on.
I'm going to start with Annika and Finn. Is your wife European?
My wife is German, yeah.
Okay, cool. So
well, we had to spend a lot of time figuring out names that you couldn't make fun of in two languages. And also, Lindstrom, I'm Swedish, so we wanted to put a little Nordic flair on their names.
Well done, sir. That's pretty cool. And I know your son is downstairs on the flight deck right now. We're recording here from the podcast studio at iFly Virginia Beach at the Virginia Beach oceanfront, third floor, overlooking the beautiful ocean. And it's just a great forum to have a podcast. And most of my podcast guests have the flight experience as my guest. We didn't do that today, but you have flown here with your son before.
Yeah.
Everybody enjoy it?
Well, I love it. I was trying to get the guy to turn the wind up a little bit because I'm kind of a fat guy. And so, you got to keep it on rookie speed, but I wanted to try a couple backflips. We'll get there someday.
Yeah, we will for sure. So that's cool. And obviously you have wind tunnel time and in your as part of your military free fall pursuits.
I do not.
Really?
So Green Berets are not all free fall. So for a time, I believe they, and this was a little bit after me, for a few years, I think they did everybody as a free fall jumper, but we typically don't employ free fall very frequently. So we have dive teams and then we have halo teams.
Right.
We didn't even have a dive team in my company. So, I mean, those are like specialty teams that we have. And I actually, I went to halo school as a standby and two Navy EOD guys missed their names on the roll call. And then they walked up and they asked me, I would be taking their slots if they didn't show up.
Wow.
Saw their name tapes and I don't know why I thought of it right after I said, hey, they already called your names. You guys better hurry up. What I should have said is they called your name. They told you to go to room 242, next building over. If you're not there in fucking 10 minutes, you're going to lose your slot. And then I would have got, the slot, but
yeah,
I did the right thing and paid for it.
Yeah.
So I never got to go to halo school.
Okay.
Static line jumper only.
Oh, okay.
Which is a gross misuse of government resources.
Totally.
What's not in my bio is I grew up as a ski jumper in Minnesota. So I've got hours of flight time.
That's crazy. That's crazy.
I would have been great at it. But
wow, that's crazy. Okay, that's right. So I read Jump Master, but you were a static line Jump Master.
Static line jump.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, cool. Well, so let's get into your childhood, man. Where did you grow up?
Grew up in Bloomington, Minnesota, about 5 minutes from the only ski jump in 6 hours. My father, my grandfather, both of my grandfathers were ski jumpers.
Wow.
So Nordic distance, long.
Yeah.
Started that when I was like 4 years old. Competed nationally, won nationals, junior nationals in 2015 with my brother.
Holy cow.
Yeah, I mean, that's high school. I'd moved to, my junior year summer, I was living in Lake Placid, New York, the Olympic Training Center.
Yeah, I love that place.
Yeah, it was, for an athlete, like like my dreams were Olympic.
Yeah.
Ski jumping. I'm the wrong size and shape though. You want to be tall and skinny and I'm like short, fat.
Yeah. Stout. We call that stout.
Yeah. So for a time I was able to overpower things on the smaller hills, but once it got to the bigger hills, I couldn't quite keep up.
It's the same thing in hockey. You were, looking at my hockey stuff earlier, right? So when we're kids, we all want to be in the NHL. Then you get to the high school level and people start to drop off. That's actually where I dropped off. Yeah. And then you get to junior hockey, you get to the juniors or collegiate level and more people drop off. And, 99% of athletes realize they don't have what it takes to make it in professional sports.
Yeah. I mean, it was interesting. So, I was 16 or 17 when I quit. It's not a sport you can do recreationally. Like
for sure,
it's 90% mental and the other 10%'s in your head. And
well, a big chunk of it is accessibility. I mean, you can't just go out in your backyard and hit a ski jump.
Yeah. Well, I mean, not a big one. So I had gotten a sponsor. A friend of mine's father was a VP at Motorola, got a sponsorship for the year, skis, travel paid for. We weren't, well-to-do. We did all right, but, that's an expensive sport to get into.
Sure.
And it literally, I hit like 17 and I was burned out. It's all I did 4 days a week from the time I was 10 years old until 17. And it's really kind of formed how I've, dealt with my kids in sports. I try my best not to push. I do make them practice for 20 minutes, anything every day to get, electronics privileges, but I was completely burned out by 17. I just didn't want anything to do with it.
That happens to so many kids. It happened to me as well because, I was on the travel team. And so I'm sleeping at friend's house weekdays and, just always on the road. And I definitely burned out on that. Plus it gets really, really competitive. And so it became, it just wasn't fun anymore. And my grades were suffering in school. And, so it is a challenge, but having coached now for 13, 14 years, that's a focus of us is not to burn kids out, and I coach travel, for a handful of years, but I coach house, which is really, it's developing the young man or the young woman as much as you're developing hockey skills, and for me, that's where the value is.
Yeah, well, I mean, everything that I learned ski jumping are the things that made me then a Green Beret and a lawyer.
Yeah.
Learning discipline, exchanging my time doing things that I want to do and are fun, like playing video games, for walking up a freezing ski jump, for a half an hour to get a 30-second ride, You put childish things in the back sooner, it matures you more quickly.
For sure. Well, it's adversity, right? And like my friend Marty Strong used to be the director of training out at Buds, that's Navy SEAL training in Coronado, California. He said that the people who were more likely to make it through were the people who experienced a lot of adversity in their childhood, challenging childhoods. And I can attest to that, and so many other people can for EOD. It's the same thing with EOD.
Yeah, I tell people you are the thing they're looking for before you get there. They're just sorting out the ones. You're not learning anything when you get there. I hear word to anybody who's thinking about going to a selection of anything. I'll tell you my story. Are we there yet?
No. We'll get there. Yeah, let's back up a little bit. So we're still in high school. You grew up in Minnesota, cold ass winters, and you're a ski jumper, and you burned out on that. Did you have a job in high school?
Yeah. I mean, I worked as soon as I figured out I could bus tables and get tips. I mean, every weekend, I was bussing tables.
That's what most high school kids do. That's right.
In the summers, I would work construction with my father. He was a mason. So swinging a sledgehammer, I was 17, so I could swing a sledgehammer all day. They loved me. But I mean, that was probably the best workout, you could get is being a brick tender. I'm just, tongs of bricks, one hand over my head onto the scaffold all day long.
Yeah.
That's just all I was doing. So
great workout.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's cool. Yeah. So how did you discover the military?
I mean, I discovered the military when I was watching G.I. Joe cartoons when I was a kid. I only had G.I. Joe toys. I knew I don't know what it was about. I've thought about this a lot. Like, what was it that enamored me to the military at such a young age? But it was, the camaraderie, obviously, the difficulty associated with the patriotism and sacrifice of saying, I will do the hard thing so you don't have to. And that's, what kept me in later.
Okay. And then, so what year did you join?
2000. I joined the Army National Guard as an air defender.
Okay.
So I went to basic training, Fort Sill, Oklahoma. My MOS training was like 6 weeks, and then they shipped me right back home, and I'm in a National Guard unit. Hated it. First day of basic training, I was like, "Are you kidding me? Like, they can't hit me. All they can do is yell at me, and they have to give me food. I get free boots.
Yeah,
I don't have to worry about matching my gear. all I do is show up and throw a grenade. Like, I could do that. So I did a year in the Guard. Which was the minimum time I could do to get released. I got released. I actually, talking about you can only ski jump, full time. I went and tried to ski jump. I hadn't jumped in like 5 years.
Okay.
So I went to the big hill, beautiful jump, but I'd gained 30 pounds of upper body weight and just straight into the hill, broke my collarbone.
Oh, wow.
So I was in college as a paramedic and firefighter, and I couldn't wear the tank, and I'd missed a day for my paramedic course, and I was going to miss another day because at that time I was coaching snowboarding, and we're going to go to nationals out in Colorado. Couldn't wear the tank, would have gotten dropped from the paramedic class, so I'm still wearing the brace for my broken collarbone, and I went back to the recruiter and said, hey, it's time for Josh to hit the road. And yeah, I did, I think, what a lot of young people do in the military. I said, get me as far away from here as you can get me. And this is, how about Germany?
Wow.
I said, I'll take it.
Okay.
And so I enlisted as an air defender. There was no bonus at the time for infantry. That's what I wanted to do. My dad's a Vietnam vet. Let me rephrase that. My dad is a veteran from the Vietnam era. He actually went to Germany as a ski patrol.
Wow.
All his friends went to Vietnam. He went to Germany, ended up as a ski patrol.
Active duty guy?
Active duty guy.
Wow.
I think he still feels a little bad about it. But
The U.S. Army had active duty ski patrol in Germany.
Yeah.
Wow. Do they still?
I don't know if they still have.
Okay.
I mean, that was back in the day. They were like blowing cornices and doing avalanches. Like,
Oh, yeah.
I don't know how he got into that.
Wow.
But all his friends were, digging foxholes in Nam. And
Yeah.
he went and,
Yeah. You get the orders you get.
I was like, Dad, don't ever feel bad about that. That's probably
For sure.
the thing that ever happened to you, and the reason I'm still here. So I enlisted as a air defender. So now I'm the first MOS was just ground man pads, man portable air defense system. So Stinger missiles.
Okay. So air defender, you're
Back of the truck, you get out, you shoot a plane.
Gotcha.
Once I got in the regular Army, they didn't have that MOS, so I had to get it's called 14 Romeo. So I was on a Bradley linebacker, they called them, which had like Stinger pods instead of tow missile pods, and then Stinger dismount.
And this is an armored vehicle.
Yeah. It's big truck with treads.
Yeah.
I think if I called tankers would get really mad. If
Okay.
I called it a tank.
Big truck with treads with a bunch of missile systems.
Yeah, missile systems, 30 millimeter chain gun. They actually, were chewing up the T-52s and T-72s in Iraq. I had some buddies that were doing that job on the march up, and they said they just chewed them up. So it shoots a 30 millimeter depleted uranium round that just eats the tanks up.
Yeah.
Said it was
discarding Sabo as exactly. Okay, so it's a type of round, uranium enriched or uranium enhanced, and in our
dart. It's small. It's got 3 Sabos, they call them, that are semicircular pieces that hold the round in the middle of the barrel, and then once the round leaves the barrel, the Sabos discard, they fly off, and then you just have this tungsten dart with an incredible amount of energy.
Penetrates armor like you wouldn't believe. Cool. So I love some of that technical stuff. Take me back to my EOD days. Yeah. So you're in the Bradley, and then how did your career progress?
I just assumed everybody in the Army was like showing up to get it. And I got to an air defense unit, and I found out that there were some people that were just there for, the GI Bill.
Mm-hmm.
And that unit, was pretty important when we were fighting armies with aircraft, and then it became less important. And so it's a combat support role. And I felt like, daily activity level matched that. And I was not happy there. I was high performing. I was doing well. I was going to get, promoted so quickly that it would have become a problem later because I'd lost my security clearance. I had gone to a half a semester at junior college and never paid for it.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know you had to pay for junior college. It was just like high school. I figured it was free.
Yeah.
So without my knowing it, they pulled my security clearance. And so I go to reenlist. I found out when I went to reenlist and become a Ranger and go to Washington was my plan. I knew my wife at the time for about 6 months.
So Washington, you're talking 75th Ranger Battalion?
Yeah, that was my plan. I said, this is what I go to the recruiter, and he's like, you can't reenlist. You don't have a security clearance. And I said, well, that's the first I'm hearing of it. I'm sure you're mistaken. Let's just go ahead and get the paperwork started. Couldn't do it. Couldn't reenlist. because I didn't have a security clearance, even though I'd paid the money off now. I heard about it. I'm like, oh, okay. I'll just pay this money off. So I'm non-retainable. I'm non-promotable.
Wow.
We're about to go to Iraq. I was like, guys, I want to go to Iraq.
Yeah.
And they're like, well, cool, you have to because your stop lost as well. So for a year, I go to Iraq, and at this time, they were automatically promoting E4 as the E5.
Yeah. So real quick, stop loss means this is like when Iraq and Afghanistan were really starting to, well, right after Afghanistan, really. Anybody on active duty who was due to get out, they were stop loss, meaning you couldn't get out. You were extended involuntarily if that was the case. Continue.
Yeah, it was voluntary. I wanted to go. So for 2 years, I had no security clearance. I couldn't get promoted. I was stuck at corporal. For those of you who don't know what a corporal is, it's a specialist with a haircut.
Yeah, E4, right?
Yeah, E4, but you get to wear like 2 stripes. Technically, you're an NCO, but nobody really sees it that way, except the people that are corporals. I thought that was pretty important. So I get this stuff paid off. Nothing happens. I can't get my clearance. I just want to reenlist. I can't even reenlist into an MOS, a job that I don't need a clearance. They're going to kick me out when we get back from Iraq. So I wrote, this is right around the time that the Army Knowledge Online started. So emails for everybody.
AKO is called,
AKO Online. So I logged into that and I used the open door policy. I wrote the division commander, the division sergeant major, and the head of HRC. I said, look, lost my security clearance 2 years ago. I want to re-enlist. There's none of the issues that caused me to lose it still exist. By the way, the only thing I have is my career in the military and this information that you guys gave me that you seem pretty, worried about me sharing. That would be the only thing I'd have left if you guys fire me. Like, this doesn't make any sense.
Mm-hmm.
And 48 hours later, I got my security clearance. And then for the next week, I stood in front of my battalion commander, battalion sergeant major, company commander, and every single one of them just nuked me in place. I mean, you're the worst. I can't believe it. I put bullets on all their OERs, all their NCOERs. I was division, third place division NCO of the year as a corporal.
Mm-hmm.
I was my battalion NCO of the year.
How come these guys are beating you down?
Because I went over their head and made them look bad.
Oh, okay. To get your clearance reinstated.
To get my clearance, just so I could reenlist.
Yeah. Okay. So then what? You reenlisted?
I didn't, because they made me mad. I said, this is when I knew I'd become a lawyer. I didn't realize it at the time, but I went in and I looked at the MilPer messages and I found out if I got out for 90 days, I would get the initial enlistment bonus, not the re-enlistment bonus. And I said, you know what? I'm getting out. I got 90 days of free leave. I lived with my wife. I lived in the States for a little while. My wife is German.
Mm-hmm.
She finished school in Munich. Then I moved to Munich for like 3 months, went to German school, learned how to surf on the Eisbach. It's a little river in Munich where there's a couple of waves built up. You can surf. So I just played fantasy football, went to German class, and surfed for like 3 months, waiting for this, period to expire so I could get a new bonus. At that time, I had already gone to selection the first time. I actually had to steal my orders from our paperwork admin S1 to prove that I was an E4 so that I could get orders to go to selection.
Okay, and explain selection real quick.
Okay, so Special Forces selection, assessment and selection is, depending on the time period, a 21-day course where you are assessed for your ability to train, in the qualification course to become a Green Beret.
Okay.
Typically, I think 420 stands out in my head. I don't know if that number stands out for an association for another reason, but I think we started with 420. I think around 200 or so finished the 21 days. And then this is what later, once I got selected, I wasn't there for this part the first time. And then I think out of that, I think they took 120.
Okay.
And then out of those 120, I don't know who makes it, but I know that we have, like, for the last 20 years, a plus number of Green Berets annually of 1. With attrition, injuries, retirements, we create 1 whole Green Beret per year.
Wow.
So that process is unlike anything I've done in the military.
You mean you're talking the Q course?
The selection.
So, okay, just the 21-day selection?
Just the 21-day selection gave me a taste of what things would look like in group. I couldn't even imagine what it would look like. I didn't know how different it could be. But I think our selection is very, very different than all the other selections. And I think it's different for the reason that we are a standalone variety of unit and very different from everybody else in that our job is not first surgical strike. Our job is to create a force to surgically strike. Basically, we are there to use host nation forces to force multiply. To enforce U.S.
You're getting into the missions of special forces, and we'll get into that. So selection, but selection is a 21-day assessment where they go, we're either going to give you a shot or go do something else.
Yep.
So you made it through assessment. They say, we're going to give you a shot. What happened after that?
So, and this is, I want to talk about the first time I went, and this is the only tip I'll give to people going to selection. The first time I went, in my head, I said, okay, if there's ever a point where I can't pick my rucksack up on my own, that's the time that Josh is done. That happened 8 days in the first time.
Wow. Okay.
We did land. I mean, we walked a lot. And I was in the infantry, so I knew a little bit about walking, but I mean,
with a heavy ruck.
Oh yeah.
With a head lead.
65 pounds.
Yeah.
The first week is physical fitness. And I mean, we did, rifle PT for 6 hours one day. We did log PT first from 4 until I think noon or 2 in the afternoon. We were doing log or rifle PT, and we never stopped. And it was the kind of thing where
is this geographically?
This is in Fort Bragg.
Okay.
Camp McCall, technically. And it was hard knowing that was going to happen the second time, but the first time I wasn't ready for it. And we actually were doing land navigation when I quit the first time. I clicked my compass closed. I was like, I grew up in the woods. I don't need this thing. I'm going that way. And I didn't find a single point. It had gone from 70 down to 50. It was freezing. We stood around for 4 hours waiting for him to find all the lost people. And I mean, I just completely seized up. I was miserable. I didn't find a point. And there was a realization that, maybe you're not ready for this yet. We got back to the compound and I couldn't pick my rucksack up. I just completely locked up and I said, hey guys, all right, I'm going to walk over. And it was very professional. They said, thank you for coming. We appreciate your effort. You're welcome to come back. And then that was when I decided I would join the infantry, learn the job, and go back. And when I did go back, and this is the thing that, I want to stick in the heads of anybody going to a selection or doing anything difficult really, is that I had to change my mentality. And that mentality change that I made is the mentality change that's gotten me through everything since. So this time, what I did is I said, okay, I took 50 feet of 550 cord, I put it in the top flap of my rucksack. And I said, if at any point I can't pick that rucksack up anymore, I'm going to tie one end to my ankle and the other end of the rucksack, and I'm going to crawl 50 feet and I'll drag my rucksack behind me 50 feet. And if they find me like that and they don't want me to work here, it's probably not the job for me. But I said, quitting is not an option. Death, this death before dishonor. I just said, I'll just do whatever they can't kill me.
I know a lot of people who made it through EOD school in Buds, and they said, I will die. I will drown.
Yeah. You have to have that mentality. Bless you. And it's a hard one to really understand until you've been challenged. And the challenges that I faced were not in selection. It was hard, but it was not until combat that, difficulties really, became either insurmountable or, you die or you live.
Okay. So, then how did you progress?
So, this is interesting. At that time, I was in an infantry unit in Germany. I'd been specifically told by the battalion commander that we're not going to Afghanistan. So I got
what
my
year
order.
Is this?
This is 2007, end of 2007. So I got my orders to go to selection after being in the infantry for a year, learning the job. And the week before I go, my platoon sergeant says, we're going to Afghanistan. We're going there in 5 weeks. You should go to selection because that training's probably going to be better than what we get. Put together a company infantry training in 2 weeks.
And selection is the full scope of
selection's the 21 day.
Okay.
So I leave, I go 21 days, I get selected.
Oh, yeah. Sorry.
I'm home for a week. I go to Afghanistan for 8 months. I get my orders for the qualification course, which is the 1.5 years, full ride. I bring him to my platoon sergeant. This is the only time in Afghanistan I ever saw him with his boots off. The guy was a complete nutcase in the best possible way. He did use me for bait on several occasions, which I didn't appreciate, but it worked. I hand him my orders, and at this time we had not really even been in contact on that deployment. It hadn't seen anything. He reads my orders, takes time, slowly read them all. He looks at me, and as he's making eye contact, he rips them up, throws them. They hit my chest and explode like confetti and fall to the floor. I'm flabbergasted. Those are signed by a 2-star general.
Yeah. Orders to selection.
Orders to leave my deployment and go to selection.
Yeah.
And he said, if you call anybody, I'll give you an Article 15 and you'll never go. And so an Article 15 is non-judicial punishment.
Yeah.
You get it for anything.
Yeah. I would say challenge accepted.
We were on a FOB with 33 people. He was the highest ranking dude there. He could have given me an article. I had a guard shift every day. I had patrols if I forgot a bullet.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I just went, okay. And I'm grateful he did that, because the next month we were in contact every day for 29 days. I'd never really been in a gunfight. I'd never fired my weapon in Iraq. We were on gate guard. I was an air defender. I was watching the FOB.
Yeah.
I was watching the infantry guys go out, and I was like, I think I could do that.
For sure.
And that actually feels safer than sitting here in the same spot every day.
That's right. Yep. Knowing they're going to be lobbing.
That's
right.
So, I'd seen some people injured and had some close calls on my first deployment, but I never fired my weapon. And so I've been selected, never fired my weapon in combat. Well, the next month I got a belly full of it, because the rest of that deployment was off the chain. At one point we'd fired so many mortars, the mortarman came to me and said, hey, will you help us dig the mortar out? I said, look, man, I got a lot to do. And he goes, okay, come down, take a look at it. And if you don't want to help, you don't have to. And I was like, all right, that's a fair deal. I come down, I look at it, a 120 mortar, 120 millimeter football thrower. The base plate's about this big. They had fired so many rounds that the base plate was dug in the ground about this deep, and the sight was at the top of there's a collar where this sight attaches to the gun. And the sight was sitting just above the level of the ground. And he said, if I shoot any more, the sight will go below the ground and I can't aim this thing. Yeah. And I said, I'll go get some shovels. So I got to learn the job, and I said, really question, do you think you can do this? You don't know, because you don't know what it is until you see it. And I said, I guess at that point I figured, if somebody's got to do it, it seems like I can do it. It seems like I can do the job. It seems like I'm pretty good at it. I don't like it very much. I've never really felt, satisfied after shooting at somebody, like we solved a big problem, and then this will be the end of it. But I figured I could do it, and got back from that deployment. They, I called to the Q course, and they yelled at me. They were like, we lost an airborne slot because you didn't show up. And I said, look, man, I couldn't even call you. If I would call you, I wouldn't be calling you now. So got into the Q course, and that was...
you still got in?
Yeah. I told them what had happened. I said, okay, my platoon sergeant threatened me.
Yeah.
And they get that a lot, because you're taking good guys out of the units, and then you send them to... They don't like it. Yeah. And we take from every MOS. There is no... I had a generator mechanic on my team, combat engineer. Yeah. Cav scout, infantry. There's our diversity, So I get into the Q course, and everything changes. All of the useless, pointless wastes of time that I experienced in the regular Army, all the preening and pomp and circumstance to give the appearance of competence, that all evaporated. Yeah. And there might be something covered in dirt on the outside, but inside it's immaculate. And the person operating it is not only good at the basics, but he's a master of the basics, and good at that he can, like playing jazz,
Yeah.
do things with it that you're not supposed to do with it, and highlight reel after highlight reel.
Dude, I'll give you an example of that. I was on a mission in the Philippines. It was a hostage rescue. I was on an ODA, and the comms guy, he had to switch between like 3 different antennas during the worst ride in the back of a box truck, clandestine type of thing. And I was like, he's never going to get that done. And I was like, how come no one's going to help that dude? And I went up and I said, hey, can I? He's like, nope, I got it. And he was just slow as smooth as fast, right? And that's what he did. Okay, so you make it to the course, you make it through the course.
Yep.
What's next?
I get assigned to 1st to 10th group, ODA 0116.
Okay.
America's team.
Okay, so 10th group out of Fort Carson, Colorado.
So 1st to 10th is actually Stuttgart, Germany.
Forward deployed.
Yep.
But the 10th group had HQ.
10th Maine, is in Colorado. So we have 1 battalion in Germany. My wife was German.
Yeah.
My language. So Green Berets, we all have to speak a language, as you know.
Yeah.
And I'd learned German. They originally had me slated for Korean. I brought them the qualification in German. I was like, please?
Yeah.
So I got to skip the language course, which is 6 months of just classroom.
Yeah,
that
right.
everybody else has to do. And I get to Germany. It was the first time anybody cared about me. My household goods hadn't arrived. My team was deployed. I said, we had a warrant officer back, Bill, said, hey, Chief, would you let me get with my team? He said, go home. There's plenty of war.
Mm-hmm.
When your household goods get here and you settle your family in, because I had a wife and a kid at the time, he said, we will send you down there. Don't you worry. So about a month before my stuff got in, and then I deployed to Capiza with 0116.
Where's Capiza?
Capiza is near Bagram, Morales-Fraser area, just past Morales-Fraser. I know that's not great.
Afghani deployment.
There was brown stuff, and then around the brown stuff, there's a brown stuff with like a base on it.
Okay.
That was my first. Nobody would talk to me on the team. Shut up, new guy.
Yeah. FNG.
And I was like, I got boots that have been in the Army longer than so many.
Yeah.
Because we had 18 X-rays, which was an unusual program and remains unusual, that you come in directly from the street to be a Green Beret.
Yeah.
Typically, before the GWAT, our average age was 32.
Yeah, right.
You had at least 5 or 6 years.
It was like that in Navy OD and Navy SEAL teams as well. And then you used to have to be an E5 just to be able to go to Navy EOD school.
Yeah.
And now it's a guaranteed contract, upon signing. So hey, times have changed.
Yeah, I'll leave my comments.
Yeah.
The people like Pete Hegseth will make decisions about that.
All right. So you're in Afghanistan. How does your career progress to the point to where you had that fateful day of an IED strike?
So eye-opening first deployment, everything's different. Second deployment, I'm settled in. I know the job.
Mm-hmm.
I know what I'm doing. I know where to steal what I don't have. I know who to finagle to get done what I can't do myself. We have a great deployment. We nobody injured. Doing the hits as we see appropriate. We had some just really great.
This is Iraq or Afghanistan?
This is Afghanistan.
Okay.
Just fantastic missions. Easy ones.
Actually, I think we were out of Iraq. This is what, 2013, 2014?
This is 2010.
Oh, 2010.
2010 was my 4th deployment. 2011, 10, 11.
Okay.
Height of the boogie.
Uh-huh.
There's always stuff going on. We had Afghani partner force. We had a Romanian ODA.
Mm-hmm.
So, we're rolling pretty heavy for an ODA. Used to doing things with 10, 11 guys, and we got, well over 50. So it was nice to have that security. Great deployment. We got a little break the next year. So that year, I think I was home 6 weeks. I was gone the last 2 months of 11, and then it was training.
Yeah.
It's all just,
training and deployment. That was a cycle for every special operator. Yeah.
And so then we deployed. I wasn't even supposed to be on that deployment. I had made an agreement with my sergeant major to get me over to the, at that time, CIF, now CRIF. So Commanders in Extremis Force, Crisis Response Force, and whatever they call it now.
I think it's still the CRIF.
Is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
I was on the CIF with Charlie 11 out in Okinawa.
Okay.
Back in the day.
Yeah. Bunch of crazies.
Oh, it was cool, man.
Yeah. Their mission is they're good. They're good at what they do.
Yeah.
They are great at what they do. It was different. I did eventually get over there, but my team sergeant had done a foreign service tour extension, and 4 guys on my team, all to make this next deployment. And so I went to the sergeant major, I bought him a beer, and I was like, hey, I know you pulled a bunch of strings to get me to the other company, but I need to stay on my team. We deploy back down, and 2 weeks in, we're just doing the basic, regular, everyday Green Beret stuff. It's the middle of the day. We drive out and we just start asking questions.
Yeah.
Who are you? Why are you selling gas? We're on a heavily IED'd route near a place called Cop Shark, which is the worst cop I've ever been to.
Okay.
1,000-foot mountains surrounding the base.
Yeah.
I went there, and there was a company infantry, and you could just tell.
Yeah.
Like,
COP, C-O-P.
company outpost.
Company outpost.
So heavily fortified in a very bad area. The routes leading in and out were so regularly IED'd. I think we'd lost 8 guys in that area in the last 30 days.
Did you have EOD guys on your team at this time?
We had our engineer.
Okay.
So
all right.
like EOD, but without all the training.
Yeah.
Close enough. Yeah. They know to measure the initiators.
Yeah.
But I don't know if they know how to like cut wires on a nuke. They'll tell you they can.
Yeah.
And I would let them try it before I would do it. But so we're out, doing what we do, just asking questions, getting to know people. Hey, why is this here? Why is that there? We have ISR up. They saw the first IED go in or get initiated or primed or whatever they did. They messed with it. So,
what do you mean they saw? Who's they?
well, the
ISR.
ISR
picked
predator,
up bad guys
overhead
prepping an IED. Okay.
And so we had a little disagreement about this because our Charlie was like, I'll walk up and put C4 on it. And I said, well,
Charlie's the explosive guy,
our engineer
on a special forces ODA. Yeah.
So the engineer, sorry, try and keep the jargon down.
That's all right.
He was like, I'll just put some C4 on it and we'll reduce it that way. And I was like, dude, I have a mini grenade launcher on the
10,000 feet.
I said, we could just back up. He's like, no. So we actually drove by it. He gets out. I wish I still had the picture. He reduces it with C4, and there's like a 300-foot mushroom cloud, and it's just my engineer, Matt, holding his gun in one hand, down on his side. His helmet is in his other hand, and he's like, I got him mid-stride with this giant plume in the background, and I wasn't able to, I don't know where that picture went, but so we turn around, and the ISR platform, the Predator operator is like, hey, there's another IED, but I lost it. And, you can imagine the radio traffic between us and him, discussing the finer points of why maybe that be something he could pay attention to next time. And we actually captured the dudes that put the idea they followed those guys with the ISR, and they tried to drive through our checkpoint. So our Afghanis, snatched them up, put them in the back of the truck, and we're coming down this main route back to the FOB, Forward Operating Base, and the Afghani guys actually spotted the IED, or thought they spotted it. And so I'm looking through the thermal, and I don't see anything. I don't see any disturbances. We got 1/10,000th of a degree. I don't see anything. And here's what I think happened. Now I'm on the crew remote operated weapon system. So I got a gun screen in front of me. The gun's on top of the truck. I have a joystick, and I can see out the window. Other than that, like, I'm blind. And
this is the Mark 150 cal?
I had a Mark 19 on there.
Okay.
So you could put different guns on there.
Yeah.
I just, grenades make people not want to fight.
Yeah.
Anytime I ever shoot the grenade launcher, the fight, it's the party pooper.
Uh-huh.
When that thing starts going off, the fighting stops,
Okay.
which is the object. So I'm looking out the window, and one of the Afghani guys gives the sign for come here. I think you know the difference, right? Drive through is waist level. You wave them through. Your body come here is like this. And I'm not like trying to put any blame on the driver. I think the driver got confused and thought that he was saying drive forward, or he was just like, fuck it. I don't know. Good dude, great guy, like no stress on him for this, but we pulled forward, and luckily the transmission kicked in. I could feel, because he floored it, I could feel it hit second and like lurched forward, and that's when it went off. So it was a command wire. So they used some sort of
Were you in an MRAP?
We were in a RG33.
Yeah.
The soft variant.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Upgraded version, luckily.
Yeah. So mine resistant, what's MRAP again? Anti-armor.
Ambush protectant. Mine resistant, ambush protectant.
Yeah. So heavy duty, armored vehicle, V-hull with these incredible weapon systems. My time in Iraq, I was on 0315, actually, a 10th group ODA. And, so I think we had 4 MRAPs in our arsenal that we...
That's about right.
Yeah. And we went out almost every day in those. But
I think it's important to note that the soft variants of those are far superior to the regular Army ones.
Yeah. What's funny is that's the only one I was ever in, so I don't even know what the regular ones look like.
When we got the regular Army stuff, we got the MATVs, so the new Humvee, the larger Humvee.
Yeah.
They issued them to us. We drove them straight to the Mad Scientist, and they put extra armor all over. I mean, the whole thing. The bottom took a 7,200-pound piece of single piece of aluminum, 2 inches thick, that went under the bottom.
Yeah.
I think that's what saved us. In this particular instance, it was about 100 pounds of HME, they figure.
Okay.
Because we might have had EOD. I don't remember a bunch about the day.
Post blast, I'm sure you did, but probably not before.
Yeah. This route like kept me up at night. Like I would wake up, anytime I would wake up and shoot illumination at the sites of all the IEDs that had occurred on this road. I just wanted them thinking, that we were watching them. So I'd wake up at random times, wake the whole base up, shooting 120 illum to just let them make them think we were out there.
So let's say 120 millimeter mortar rounds that were illumination rounds, which burn Willie Pete, white phosphorus.
So I think they have phosphorus in them, but not like a Willie Pete round.
Okay.
So a Willie Pete or white phosphorus is a round used for marking. So when they explode, they blow chunks of white phosphorus that burns in oxygen, creates a ton of smoke, help aircraft, cue into targets. Just a way to, communication round. These ones also can be used for various forms of communication, but have a ball of phosphorus that is contained under a parachute. So I shoot it, and it pops at the top, and then it floats down, and I like to time it so the next one pops right when that one goes out, because it's kind of eerie. And then if you've seen,
it's a psyop to the bad guys for sure.
If you've seen Apocalypse Now, there's some scenes.
Just thinking.
Yeah, there's some scenes where the illumination goes off, and then you hear this wah, 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 and you're like, what is that? That is the sound of the canister, the hollow canister falling off and tumbling to the ground, that eerie sound.
Yeah.
It was
that's exactly what large frag sounds like when it's coming at you as well. So exactly. Yeah, you hear that and you're like, holy cow, man.
Yeah, that's a bad noise to hear. Especially if EOD's around. I know you guys are kind of peeved for plenty, guys.
Yeah. You know that formula.
I'm not good with time fuse, but I know that you guys.
Yeah. Oh, I love that formula.
So we drove over the IED. It went off. Honestly, the only reason I know I was knocked out is because before.
Where were you in the vehicle?
I was in the gunner seat. So I was dead center in the middle, facing forward, right hand side.
Okay.
And I'd never done this before, but I tensed up. I remember I pushed my feet against the floor and I gripped my joystick that I control the gun with, and I was just waiting for it. I closed my eyes. And when I woke up, I was looking at the ceiling. The truck was filled with smoke. No pain at all. I think adrenaline had hit. And I looked over at my friend Matt, and he, eyes as big as quarters, and I laughed. I thought it was funny. I had so many near misses up to this point that I just assumed,
this was another one.
Yeah. Try again, fellas.
Yeah.
flipped the gun on and started shooting. The gun still worked. The vehicle, we had to put the vehicle out. It was on fire or something. I never got out of the vehicle. The other guys that weren't on the gun, because my gun was working, that's my job as the weapons guy. Like, I sit in the truck and I got hands on 2 butterflies, and everybody else gets to go talk to people and go in houses and do fun stuff. And I'm just sitting there like,
well, so I don't want to get down too many rabbit holes here, but didn't you rotate that?
Like the Echo you mentioned, if anybody came near one of my guns, I would probably slap their hands.
Oh, wow.
I mean, I had my guns. You put the most experienced person on the most casualty producing weapon. So because these systems are complicated.
Yeah.
When you're offsetting your sight to your gun.
Yeah.
And then
I got you.
So
again, we had the Mark 150 cal, and we rotated that position. There was definitely the expert, but they're like, hey, put the EOD guy in the chair, Yeah. And
well, I'm from the infantry, and the rule is the senior ranking dude gets the 240, the guy that knows the most about it, because it's the most important. And so I felt like my position on the team was make sure those guns A, work, B, hit what they're aiming at.
Yeah.
So if I die, somebody else can walk in there and easily use it.
Yeah.
But if it needs to be shot, it should be
you're the guy to do it.
It should be me.
Okay. All right.
So yeah, but ODAs are very tribal, man. You go on a different ODA and you'll get all different flavors of how people do things.
For sure. All right. So you're back in the chair. You're trying to acquire targets.
Yeah, known, likely, and suspected. I didn't see anything. We had some compounds that later, when the guys got out and pushed through, there was a small ambush.
Was the vehicle still rolling?
No. It was done after that.
Okay.
We towed it back later. The gun was still working though, which I was pretty impressed with. But it was interesting. I'd lost the zero, so the truck blew up, and when the truck blew up, the gun went like that. So at the first couple rounds I shot, went right in next to the truck. I had to aim way up over.
Yeah, okay.
To get him to hit where I wanted.
But were you not injured in that strike?
That I was very injured, and this is what traumatic brain injury is. This is what's driven me to do all this stuff.
For sure. Was anybody else on your team seriously injured at that time? Okay. I mean, were you guys like, oh, medevac, get Casevac out?
No, we were not.
Okay.
One guy, the guy sitting behind me, his cochlea was ruptured in the blast. Didn't know it for 4 years.
Wow. How'd he stand up? I mean, that's
he's a Green Beret. No, he was falling all over the place.
Okay.
And we would just make fun of him.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? What, you can't stand up anymore?
Yeah.
I mean, so here's the thing with traumatic brain injuries, and this is the biggest hurdle that, I get with talking about. Guys look fine right afterward.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that was you.
Maybe, yeah. Well, I knew I wasn't fine. As soon as the adrenaline wore off, I knew I was not fine.
Okay.
How bad it would get, I found out later. But at the time, your body dumps adrenaline on the problem.
Yeah.
I didn't feel a thing. It never occurred to me that I would get injured, not killed in combat, and that I could be injured so badly without seeing anything on the outside. And this informs, the thrust of what I'll say later about TBI. I think that we have 10 times as many injured as the DOD reports. I have proof from the DOD that their own numbers are wrong. And those guys are making up the bulk of the military suicides right now.
Yeah. Well, we'll get into that. We're going to take a quick break for capitalism. Fascinating discussion, and we will be back in 2 minutes. I want to take a minute to tell you about my book titled Elevate Your Leadership: How to Develop, Maintain, and Advance Lifelong Leadership. This book is based on my 26 years in U.S. Navy Special Operations and now 13 years in the private sector. Leadership is a perishable skill and a personal brand. In part 1, I guide you through building and applying your personal brand of leadership. Leadership also requires physical energy and mental clarity. In part 2, I go over the 6 key components of health and wellness and how you can apply these components every single day to become a great leader. This book is also breathable. What does that mean? It's 170 pages, 12-point font, with charts and graphs and pictures to break up the monotony of reading page after page. Finally, this book is available on Amazon.com, BarnesandNoble.com, and of course, RobertPizzini.com. And we are back. We're talking to Josh Lindstrom, retired Army Green Beret, a burgeoning or an emerging attorney, and director of
The Blastology Foundation.
the Blastology. So let's edit that. And director of the Blastology Foundation. Okay, so we're getting close to Blastology and all that stuff, and it really stems from the experience you're talking about. So you were injured, but you didn't know it. At what point after this event, did you start to recognize injuries and seek treatment?
Immediately. So we towed the truck back. We went to the Charlie Med there in Shank, if you're familiar. And I was reporting symptoms immediately that I felt were kind of innocuous. I didn't think it was that big of a deal. Look, we just wanted to get back in the trucks and go find those dudes.
Yeah.
I mean, I sat down and was making a plan to kill those guys.
And it was every
plan.
After every IED strike, that's exactly what the crew does. That's right. That's exactly right.
But they wouldn't let us. They wouldn't let us do anything for a month, actually. In that time, man, it feels like getting hit by a truck. Everything hurt. Everything. My head.
This is like 12 hours later?
This is like 6 hours later.
Okay.
I get out of the truck and I'm like, what the fuck? Like, the only thing I can compare it to, and it's on a different magnitude, is I used to skateboard. And at one time, me and another guy had come off ramps moving pretty fast and hit perfectly. It was like, arms and legs go.
Yeah.
And all your guts get smooshed. And it felt horrible. I felt horrible. And I wasn't nervous about it because I assumed I was fine until 2 days later, we had to call the Yusufik commander, 2-star, wants to have breakfast with 2 guys on each ODA. So we fly to Bagram. We get in the hoplite, those rotators that they had down there, the big Russian cargo helicopters.
Oh, yeah.
Softest ride in the world, smoothest helicopter ride you can get.
Hoplite.
We got up, we hovered to about 100 feet, and he goes to, pitch to turn. As soon as he pitched that aircraft, I almost threw up in my shirt. And I mean, I've never, I've hung from beneath aircraft. I've jumped out of them. I've done combat landings in C-130s in Iraq. Never had air sickness ever in my life. And he gently, turns it. And I was like, I was a Green Beret, I was going to vomit in my shirt and pretend like nothing happened.
Yeah.
And I don't really remember the rest of the deployment. I stayed for 8 months. I remember some pretty horrible stuff that happened later, bits and pieces of that. But other than that, it was the best deployment ever. I have really no recollections of that. I really have no real memories from the next 4 years, just bits and snippets.
Holy cow.
I mean,
any physical deficits?
All of them in my head.
Okay. All right.
So body, ortho stuff, from carrying rucksacks and falling out of planes and stuff. But the only thing that was hurt. So first of all, I think that when you are exposed to blast from a certain proximity, close enough, you are not hurt as we think about a broken bone. It's probably on an atomic level. Boyle's Law, you're a diver.
Yeah.
If you're compressed and decompressed too quickly underwater, you get the bends. Well, if that compression to decompression happens in milliseconds, do the cells just burst instead of the nitrogen leaking out?
Yeah.
What
There's cellular level damage. It's kind of the summary there. For
potentially atomic level.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, physically, I'm fine.
You're fine. Going to the gym?
I'm not really after that.
Okay. Running?
No.
Okay.
No. If I ran, if my heart rate got up, I would get a migraine that was just unbelievable.
Okay.
So anytime we're doing anything, just massive migraines.
So you're starting to notice at this point that something is definitely wrong.
I wouldn't even say that I was, you can rationalize like we do these micro failures that occur
for sure,
in the day. I don't dig my corner right. Brain fart. And being deployed's easy.
Mhm.
I only have a couple things to do. My food's taken care of.
Yeah.
I don't have to worry about my wife and kids.
Yeah.
You know, I walk this way, I pull a trigger.
Yeah.
Those are all things that I've built into my medulla, you know, through muscle memory, thousands of repetitions. I don't need to think about it. My body autonomically will perform a reload if I pull my pistol's trigger and it goes click. So I didn't think much of it until we got back, and I was struggling to get to work on time. I was struggling.
In Germany?
I'm back in Germany now. I end up going over to the SIF company because I told the battalion commander I was going to take the S3 air job, which is coordinating all the jumps. Keeping it's a desk job.
Yeah.
And he said, "What did he fuck up?" And I heard he said that, and I said, "Never mind, send me over to the assault company." And you know what it's like over there. Pelican cases of charges, blowing doors, you know, until they're 2 feet tall just to see who can do it the fastest. And the moment that got me, we were doing CQB. I was the 2-man center fed room. 1 man goes right. So now my job is to do basically 180 left and dig that corner. As I step through the door and I do that, I take 3 crossover steps into the middle of the room. And for those of you who don't know, CQB, or close quarters battle, is it's like a dance. It's a predetermined dance. It's like
orchestrated.
Perfectly. Like the Casper slide.
Choreographed.
The whole dance floor is moving the same way at the same time. Your job as an assaulter is twofold. One is to reduce threats. The second is to be the plate for your partner when he is not facing the direction that you then face. And I had a moment of clarity, and I said, look, and I was struggling pretty bad. My wife was recognizing it. You know, many issues.
And that's one of the hallmarks that's, you know, very, very common.
Family issues, interpersonal, you know, I'll get into all the symptoms and stuff later. It is very nuanced. And it's difficult to see. That's why we call them invisible injuries. It's why so many were missed. But you look at the NFL, every Super Bowl that's ever been won has been won by a guy either with or who's had a concussion. Soldiers can fight with concussions. Just like a soldier with one arm that just got shot off can still fire a pistol with the other arm. Like, we don't give him any time off. We delay treatment based on the tactical situation. I think explosions need to be exploded. Ranges need to be conducted. Rockets need to be fired. Guys need to put charges on doors. We're going to get concussions. It's the price of doing business. My problem is pretending like it's not happening, which is what's going on right now. So I take 3 crossover steps into the middle of the room, moving my plate from my partner's side. And there was a door, luckily, in the direction I stumbled. So when part of the dance is never being in the middle of the dance floor. That is, if there's one rule, it's no dancing in the middle of a room where 4 dudes are shooting live rounds across each other. And that's where I put myself. Luckily, there was a door, and I stumbled towards it, and I said, "Hey, guys, you guys can't keep up. Like, I cut this corner. I'm going to this door. Like, let's go." That was how I justified it to the team at the time. But I knew in my head, I was like, that we're on a beeper. We're on a 2-hour timer. And that was the first time I realized if you're not 100, you're 0. It's binary. There is no, I'm 90% today.
That's a big lesson in leadership too. So maybe we'll get to that, but go ahead.
Well, I mean, you know, I'd like it to be worth that much, but so I went to my team sergeant and I said, "Look, man, I'm sorry. Like, I'm seeing at that time I went and saw, we had a unit psychiatrist, and I was like, I'm having depression, memory problems, just incredible memory problems.
You're still in garrison. You're in Germany, and this is the kill house or the training range where you're having these issues. Gotcha.
And just blowing charges and just doing the exact opposite of what I should be doing.
So, because just real quick, TBI, you know, the mildest form of TBI is concussion. And most of us have experienced some form of that. And then concussion is cumulative. So if you don't let the first one heal fully, the next one will have a kind of an accelerated effect. So
I'll get into the weeds on that, but there is some healing of the brain, but it happens at a glacial pace. It takes 30 years to assemble a brain under normal conditions. When you injure it, you're basically disassembling it. You're breaking the neuronal connections, and CTE, chronic traumatic encephalopathy. I don't know if you've seen with Will Smith, concussion.
Yeah, a bunch of them.
Yeah. So CTE is when the myelin, the insulated.
Who's the former New England Patriot that murdered people? You know who I'm talking about?
I don't want to say that.
It was something like that. It was a Hispanic guy.
Yeah. Hernandez? I don't want to say the wrong name.
Yeah.
But I know who you're talking about.
But
Aaron Hernandez.
And they took his brain apart and said, terrible CTE.
Now, when I get off the beaten track here, I believe I can explain most military suicides, guys that, we both know that don't make any sense, that have committed suicide.
Yeah.
I think there's a link. I'll get into that, here in a little bit.
All right.
But, so personally, I'm feeling absolutely awful, emotionally destroyed. And so they start treating me for PTSD. And I just assume, well, yeah, I mean, I've been through combat. I've seen some horrible stuff. I've done things, that are difficult. Yeah, I guess I do have PTSD. Now I would say that I feel a little differently about PTSD, specifically because people in car accidents or a plane crash don't volunteer. Like, part of their PTSD is, I don't want to get in a plane, or I don't want to get on a car. But that doesn't make sense for a military member. Like, I knew I was working at the car crash factory. I knew there would be more car crashes, and I kept signing up. And so when we think of, I'd like to separate PTSD into pre-TSD.
Okay.
And then PTSD. PTSD is what people get when they don't expect to be in a car accident. Pre-TSD is what we develop through training, stress, and repetition in our military training. And that function has one end goal, which is to control the fight, flight, or freeze response.
Okay.
That response is most simply characterized as the body dumping adrenaline on problems.
Okay.
And then us learning how to use that in an organized way, not have it turn the front brain off, and still be able to access our high brain capacity when a low brain signal, a medulla oblongata, a survival brain signal is received. And the PTSD for service members, I think, is less. And so a disorder implies an addition of something. I had one thing and now that thing is not working. There's a new thing happening. What I argue is that if I look at my dog, who's lived with me every year, or every day of her life since she was 8 weeks old, she still jumps when my wife bangs a pot on the stove because she has a survival instinct. Mm-hmm. Because I'm a human and I live in a Western society where loud noises are most likely cars backfiring or something falling over, not something that will harm me in a lethal way. I dull those survival instincts to the point where I don't notice things that if I was an animal in nature, I would certainly notice and take action on. I ignore things every day. Once you go into combat, it gets harder to ignore those. I don't think you're losing something. I think you're regaining your natural survival instinct, and it's a mechanism that is powerful and not super.
Dude, that is I have to totally agree with that, and that is such an interesting point. You hypervigilance is basically what you're talking about. So you null your hypervigilance in normal society, like in a restaurant, right? You hear a crash in the kitchen. I don't even turn and look. It's a crash in the kitchen. It happens every day in every restaurant, but if there's action after the crash in the kitchen, then maybe I'll turn and look. But then you go to the war zone and that hypervigilance is dialed up from the day you get there.
Oh yeah. And then your body associates the danger. You don't need to be near an explosion to know, like, that is super bad for human flesh.
Could be coming my way.
Yeah,
yep.
That is not something I'd like to be close to. And I can't believe how close I've been to some and survived.
All right, so you're in the kill house, you're having troubles. You go to your team sergeant, you have the discussion with them, or your team sergeant major. And
well, luckily I got to talk to both of them. Not luckily, really. It was hard. It's the job you can only quit once.
That's a good point, man.
I mean,
job you can only quit once.
You don't quit that job twice. You either get hurt and one of the teams had a saying on their door, and I thought it was bullshit when I first saw it. It said, "Special Forces is a mistress, and someday she's going to leave you for a younger man. And I was like, no, not me. And I left the way most guys leave, which is kicking and screaming. And when I went and got help, all I told him was like, do whatever you need to do to put me back on a team. Like, you tell me what to do and I will do that thing. And so the first thing they did was put me on an antidepressant, which was probably, and for several reasons, the worst thing you could do to somebody. Number one, CTE is a condition that can't be diagnosed until you're dead. You have to take my brain out, slice it, diet, look at it under a microscope. Where's the drug trial? They were just throwing darts. And I mean, it's such an oppressive medical environment in the military for two reasons. Number one, I'm a Green Beret. I got a Special Forces tab and a green hat hanging out in my pocket. I'm still in decent shape until I started taking all these meds and I got fat. But you walk in looking fine and you're like, but I'm not fine. Like, I can't remember what time work starts tomorrow. And it's the same time it's been starting for the last 9 years. That's a problem. Okay. I had a photographic memory. This is downrange. This is where I noticed it. I used to have the serial numbers. I have a platoon worth of guns. I'm the gun guy. They have sights. They have lasers. They have flashlights. Every one of them has a serial number. And if I didn't know them when I was in the arms room, I would walk up to my desk in my head, open the drawer in my mind, flip through the sheet, and I had all the serial numbers memorized. I could just look at them. And what I noticed downrange is I could not collate the guns I had to the list I had. I would spend 2 or 3 days doing it as opposed to the 20 minutes I spent before. And the cascade of effects with that is I can't do other stuff. My anxiety increases because I'm not getting done what should take 10 minutes. I mean,
and then at home there were struggles there as well.
I mean, this is when I talk about TBI, I will say that the most common and most difficult symptom that we deal with is what I was diagnosed with was intermittent irritable outbursts. And what that meant was I would break furniture in my house. We had a joke at the TBI clinic. Are you a thrower, a smasher, or a snapper?
Wow.
Communication devices, for some reason, get all the smoke. Dude, smash them. Just have these irritable outbursts that are not related to anything. They're just almost random. And I'll tell you exactly what they are here in a little bit. It's super interesting. I believe they're seizures. And there's some medical proof that points that way. And I move into the novel here. And this is, you asked me about blastology. I'm a blastologist. Okay. How I got that title was not by going to school. It was by going to doctor's appointments. It was by getting blown up, dealing with all the stuff I had to deal with, and being one of the very few guys that have come out the other side. And I can tell you right now, I feel okay. I'd say I'm probably half of where I used to be, energy-wise, memory capability. At the bottom, I tell people I felt like an animal. I had no ability to draw on memories, even from the recent
So this is what year? What year when you were at your rock bottom, felt like an animal?
2012 through 2018.
Oh, in Germany the whole time?
I got out in 2015.
Okay. So in 2015, when you got out, did you separate from Germany?
I retired from Germany.
Okay. Okay.
I was trying to stay in. I'd had it approved. I was in what's called a warrior transition unit. I think you guys call them Navy Safe Harbor. My commander was a coward. My colonel was didn't care. I did first time in my life I did a congressional. Like, I've never.
You initiated one?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, okay.
So explain the circumstance. So you quit from your special forces, from your ODA, from your special forces 13.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, there's probably a better way to describe it actually, because you were jacked up and you knew it.
Yeah.
And so you were seeking
Still don't
help.
like it. Yeah.
Yeah. You were seeking help. So in the process of seeking help, you separate from your unit. Do you get put like in a med status until separation, or what?
I'm in a warrior transition unit for a year and a half.
Okay.
I have upwards of 20 doctor's appointments a week sometimes.
All in Germany still.
Yeah. That's why I had a PCS, because it's a isolated village.
For sure.
It's like 2 hours to get to the doctor, and I couldn't do that 6 times a week.
Yeah.
Driving at night in the rain, impossible. I mean, so I go to the warrior transition unit. I mean, I'm trying to stay in and they're trying to get me out.
Okay.
And I was like, I don't understand. Like, we had a bunch of Green Berets laying around. Like, I felt like, for all this training. And so finally, I had been approved to go in and be a advocate for the SOCOM Care Coalition. And
while on active duty?
To stay on active duty. So
stay on active duty.
There's a thing called a continuation on active duty, or COAD. And if you're over 15 years, especially MOS, combat injury, like, you can go hand out towels at the gym.
Okay. They want to get you to 20. Yeah.
So, the advocacy position would be, soft skills, but live and work at lawn stool. And when a wounded soft guy comes in, you're the first face they see. And if they want a Twix, you go get them a Twix.
Okay.
You arrange their family coming in.
Yeah.
Make sure they got food. Make sure the doctors are taking care of them.
Okay.
It's a great program that SOCOM does, and every, wounded SOCOM operator will have that advocate. And so I thought that would be a great job that, fit my
be the guy.
personality.
Yeah.
It's a tough job. Dude wakes up and realizes he doesn't have his legs. You're the first, one of the first faces he sees. That's
heavy. That's
heavy. It's a heavy job, but it's a long, stupid story. I had a surgery scheduled. My doctor, who had removed his rights to view my HIPAA information because he lied to my face, then went and viewed my HIPAA information and canceled the surgery. That's when I did the congressional. And
what was the surgery supposed to be?
It was a sinus surgery. I was having sinus infections.
Yeah.
My problem wasn't that he canceled the surgery. I actually would thank him for it now, because after I did the stem cell treatment, my sinuses are great. But it was that he looked at my medical stuff and then it started an administrative action against me using that medical information.
Huh.
That's the one thing you own in the military. Listen to me, guys, is your medical stuff. I learned that in that unit, and it's the one thing you own outright that nobody can really mess with too much.
Mm-hmm.
So that was terrible. I had 60 days to get out of Germany. Okay,
so he cancels the surgery based on what?
He said it was based on the fact that I was too close to getting out, and if something happened, that might extend my time on active duty. Which, by the way, is a little bit of a slap in the face. Like,
yeah, I've seen that happen to dudes all the time. It's normal. So the military prefers that to make sure that they're,
one out and putting a new one in.
Yeah.
Broken toys, man.
Wow.
Army does not like broken toys. So we moved to Virginia Beach. My wife had a vacation scheduled here, random. At that time, I thought I was staying in. And then this is when, I basically...
So from Germany, you moved to Virginia Beach.
Yeah. I told the commander, I said, look, these two guys are lying. My care coordinator and my doctor, or I am. And if I'm lying, I want a court martial right now.
Uh-huh.
And
lying about what?
What they'd done to cancel this surgery.
Okay.
And they tried to stop me from going to the Warrior Games. They said, if you're so hurt, you can't go to the Warrior Games is specifically for people with no arms. I have both my arms.
Uh-huh.
I had surgery on my shoulder at the time, and they were just doing it to be dinks.
Okay.
And it was unambiguous, and they were used to dealing with people who, when they saw somebody of a certain rank or position, they'd be like, "Oh, okay, sir."
Yeah.
And I was like, "No, that's not."
Yeah. You're being a Green Beret.
That was my problem around there. I put my hat on inside the building one time. Somebody literally chased me, and I was like, "My guy."
Yeah.
It's a presidential award. I'll wear wherever I want. Go tell on me.
Yeah. Go tell admin.
Yeah. So wife has a vacation schedule here. And I said, babe, it takes 2 months to buy a house. You have to put a bid in on a house, or we're not going to have anywhere to live. Found us a house here.
But so she's coming here for vacation. Why do you decide that that's where we want to live? Had either one of you been here before?
No, we didn't have a choice.
Okay.
It was, she had this thing scheduled. That was it takes 2 months to close a mortgage.
Yeah.
I had 60 days left.
She had a vacation schedule.
Yeah. She came here to run a 5K with her buddy who was married to a guy on my team.
Okay. All right.
And
she came here to run a race.
Yeah. And I said, babe, buy a house too.
Oh, okay. Hey, while you're going to that town we've never been to run a race, why don't you go ahead and buy a house?
There wasn't a choice.
Yeah.
I mean, that was the only way to get somebody here in an amount of time that we could also then close a mortgage.
Yeah. Okay.
So, I mean, it was fortuitous,
So you're thinking, hey, we're moving back to the States. That place is going to work for us, and we're going to move out. We're going to move out on it full speed ahead. We're not jacking around.
No choice.
Yeah.
It was not like a motivated.
But you could have went somewhere else. You could have went to Fayetteville or Pinehurst. Or
My wife would never move back to Fayetteville.
Okay, right.
We were there for the Q course,
Yeah.
and if you know Murchison, I don't know if you're ever down in Bragg, but I drove my motorcycle with her all the way down, Murchison, not knowing what it was, and she was like, "Where did we move?"
Yeah. Or what about Minnesota? Did you think about going back home?
Yeah, I did, but again, my wife is German, so to get back to Germany, using MAC flights, all the terminals were on the East Coast.
Yeah.
And my wife has never made a bad decision.
Okay.
I took her from her country. I said, "You decide." She's like, "I want to live at the beach."
Cool.
And there's military here.
Yeah.
ADS I thought about maybe working for ADS.
Yeah.
I got out. And so I said, "Yeah, let's do it."
Folks, I want to take a minute and talk about Breeden Construction. Breeden Construction built iFly Virginia Beach 10 years ago, and our building is solid. Why? Building a standard. Our standard is excellence. Visionary thinking, innovative design, dynamic solutions, and transformative growth. While others may see lofty ideals, we see the very foundation needed to construct a better future. This isn't just a promise we make to you, it's the standard we uphold. This is Breeden Construction. Learn more at breedenconstruction.com. Headquartered in Virginia with offices throughout Virginia and North Carolina, you can contact Breeden Construction directly at area code 804-364-4600. Breeden Construction, a national general contractor. Okay, so you decide, for all the right reasons, Virginia Beach is the place you're going to move to. And were you still on active duty when you arrived in Virginia Beach?
I may have had some terminal leave. I don't really remember.
Okay.
But probably.
Okay. So you're on, but you're done basically wearing the uniform at that point.
Done wearing the uniform, terrified, 60 days of, no time to get a job. None of the things that,
What was your intent upon arriving in Virginia Beach? What was your next move?
So.
Law school?
No, that came later. So at this time I'd already done the Warrior Games. And
you competed in archery?
I mean, I competed in a bunch of stuff. The only thing I was good at was archery. The first year I got my ass kicked by a girl, and that made me mad. So I grew up shooting a bow. I actually, like I said, I had surgery on my shoulder, and I couldn't shoot a bow right-handed anymore. So I had to learn how to shoot lefty, and got into that because I was still in the doctors at least once, twice a week.
Mm-hmm.
I did 3 months down in Tampa at the polytrauma. It's the prep program a lot of guys go to.
Prep for what?
Prep is a acronym. Prep, polytrauma something. It's the TBI treatment for the VA runs down in Tampa.
Okay, all right.
It was the 3 month. I was there 3 months inpatient.
Wow.
Doing every therapy that they have for TBI, which is.
Do you remember the name of the facility? Or?
Yeah, it was the down in Tampa, the VA. There's a name of it.
Okay, it's VA hospital in Tampa.
Yeah, the VA.
Okay, is where this program is
VA hospital in Tampa. Vestibular therapy. So all these like weird, the NHL and the NFL are using all these balance assessments and.
I did the same thing in Colorado, in Aurora, Colorado. It was called the Marcus Institute for Brain.
I went to the Marcus Institute.
Cool.
I think prior to prep, but I can't really remember.
Okay. All right. Are you still having memory deficits and difficulties?
Yes.
I mean, you're getting ready to take the bar exam.
I know. Tell me about it. It's so different now. For me, like I said, I used to have a photographic memory. I would just remember all the things on this page and then picture that page. I can't do that anymore.
Wow.
It's
not many people can do it to begin with.
So, it was really, I didn't realize I left high school with a GED. Terrible. I was an athlete. I didn't care about my grades. It's dysgraphia, so I can't write. And I grew up writing things. Yeah. So everybody just thought I was an idiot. I thought I was an idiot. Until I got to the Army, and they're like, memorize these things that you do with your hands, memorize these ranges. And I would, crush That's how I became the NCO of the year and all that stuff.
Yeah.
I memorize all these, regulations and firing rates and, systems and tables. And I was like, well, maybe I'm not an idiot.
Yeah. Same thing with me. High school was a bit of a struggle, especially when it came to all the math courses. But when I went to Navy dive school and we're, calculating mixed gas percentages for various depths and duration, then the math made sense. Then it was not difficult at all. It was actually fun.
It's a lot easier when you're going to die when you do it wrong.
Yeah.
You get a little more studious.
Yeah, a little incentive.
So, the memory problems and like, I'll be real open about it, like memory problems, emotional issues. And this is a common across guys I talk to, from space shuttle gunner to infantrymen to, support personnel. These irritable outbursts, these emotional, outbursts that, road rage. If you would have asked me at the time, do you think you should have a driver's license? I would have told you, no. I do not think I should have a driver's license. You either become incensed or, like, I would start crying if you gave me like a phone number. Just so out of character.
Wow.
Stuff, just really weird. Like and the main problem was that there was no association with the stimulus.
And this is while you're here, or this is when you're at this clinic in Florida?
All through those periods until 2019.
Okay.
So these incidents that I've been speaking very generally about, I believe, are seizures. And I'll describe the process here because I think it's super interesting. It's easy to look at somebody with a TBI, an invisible injury, and be like, oh, it's not that bad. Okay. Your brain is made up of two component parts, right? Wires and insulation, right? And in there, you have some CPUs that collate information, distribute directions, receive information, orient you to the world around you. It's like a TV, okay? Inside the TV, there is a CPU that decodes all the signals and produces a picture. That is fed by power from the power cable and information from the audio and visual cables, right? If we took those wires and stripped them bare and laid them over the top of each other, you wouldn't get a picture on your TV anymore. And that is, I believe, the source, that system of uninsulated wires. And there's a study from Maryland that they did a couple of years ago with Alzheimer's patients. Alzheimer's and CTE are similar in that the end result is uninsulated neurons. All right. The insulation on neurons is called myelin. It's a fatty substance.
Protein, right? Is it a protein?
It's a fatty protein.
Okay.
And also not a doctor. So if you're a doctor and you're like, it's a protein and an amino acid, like, okay, cool. You know something I don't know. But that is not only an insulator, it's also an amplifier. So first of all, uninsulated neurons conduct information at 1/100th of the speed of an insulated neuron. So if you have a condition where your neurons are uninsulated, they are doing 1/100th of their job.
What would that condition be?
Alzheimer's, dementia, Parkinson's, multiple sclerosis, and traumatic brain injury.
Okay.
CTE.
Okay.
So through these other degenerative diseases, either your body's inability to make the repairs because you don't eat the right foods that those materials are found in, or a parasite is eating those before they get there, or there's all these other conditions that lead to your neurons, your brain's inability to remyelinate the neurons. Naturally, we end myelination around 45.
So did you learn all this while in Tampa, while at the Marcus Institute?
Blastologist.
Okay.
I learned this because I went to doctors and they told me things like write stuff down. And I said, Doc, what if I have to write down that you told me to write that down? And then I have to write down that I wrote it down. You don't realize how much your brain is doing. Not only when it stops doing it, you have to get it working again to really realize how bad it was.
So let's define blastologist. What are you? What I've not heard that term before I met you.
I made it up. That's
okay. Okay.
But if you ask me anything about brain injury, I have either a experience with it, and not just experience living with the side effects, but I'm one of the only people I know that's gotten better. There's another dude. I'll talk about him a little bit.
Okay. Well, let's talk about your recovery. So, and getting better. So you attended all of these inpatient and outpatient, and the one in Colorado that I went to is an IOP, intensive outpatient program. And so during this process, at some point, it appears you decided, I'm really going to focus in on this. I'm really going to understand this.
I would bring things to doctors and they would be like, I've never seen it. So the ketogenic diet, right? Look, I'm going to just back up just a second, and finish my seizure thing here with the brain, because that puts all of this in focus. So a brain uninsulated because of damage, or in the case of this study that I'll talk about, Alzheimer's, what they found was that they put EEG leads outside of the skull of these Alzheimer's patients, and they could detect no odd neural activity. But when they put the EEG leads into the thalamus, what they witnessed is seizures between individual parts of the brain, not the entire brain, just parts. Memory loss, speech difficulties, agitation. Those symptoms in Alzheimer's patients were associated with these tiny seizures. And if you talk to people with brain injuries, they complain of fatigue, memory loss, confusion, disorientation, balance problems. These come from tiny, locally powered seizures. You store glucose in your brain turns that into a signal. When it sends that signal over uninsulated wires, like on your TV, if they're laying bare over the top of one another, you're not going to get the signal. All right. So the brain repeats the process with a little more power and a little more power and a little more power, creating a seizure in millisecond intervals. All right. Until the locally stored glucose is gone. In somebody with a TBI, what that looks like is stuttering, loss of balance, forgetting what you're talking about. If we were having this conversation before I had the stem cell treatment I would have forgotten what I was talking about on at least a dozen occasions.
Okay. All right.
Difficult to read social cues. When is it my turn to talk? The end result is you look like an asshole. You show up to work late. You don't know what's going on. You forgot an important piece of gear. I've seen this happen over and over. Old guys that have been around forever, they get blown up. They miss movement. Like what?
Yeah, that's a UCMJ offense.
I mean, big time stuff. Missing movement is when, the unit has a bird tasked to fly somewhere and you don't show up.
Yeah.
Like that's a huge deal.
Yeah.
And it's a thing that I see happening to guys. It happened to me. And those are little seizures that happen, I think, 100 times a day, potentially.
Okay.
Now, we talked about pre-TSD. All right. This is the harnessing of the adrenaline response, right? Mm-hmm. Adrenaline is just neatly packed energy stored by the body to use in an emergency. Mm-hmm. And there's 3 situations, I think, that trigger this second type of seizure. And these are the ones that I call suicidal seizures. And this is what I believe has happened to nearly every veteran. If you look at the suicide rates for service members with traumatic brain injuries, the suicide rate is through the roof. Mm-hmm. in a cohort where the suicide rate's through the roof. Mm-hmm. So it's extremely bad for these guys. And I think it's because of this particular mechanism, because the guys that I know that have killed themselves, you can't tell me, I will not believe you that they killed themselves. They were just like, oh, I can't take it anymore. These guys could take anything. I choose to believe that there was an outside influence in, if not all of them, nearly all of them. And I believe it's the suicidal seizure. This seizure, when the brain burns off the glucose, has a secondary set of input. And that secondary set of input is probably one of 3 things. My wife is going to leave me and take the kids. I'm losing my job and I can't provide for my wife and kids anymore. And then she's going to leave me and take the kids. Or this guy, I feel like somebody wants to fight me. I'm threatened. Though one of those 3 things happens, the body snaps on the adrenaline. Now you have a seizure that's burned all the glucose out and is running exclusively on adrenaline.
How did you narrow it down to those 3 things?
It's what I experienced. It's the only associations I could make with those irritable outbursts were, one of those 3 situations.
Yeah. So I'll tell you, I have 2 close friends who took their own lives, both Navy EOD techs. And in both cases, it was one of those 3 things that you just mentioned.
This is what makes me so mad. I got a GED and a head injury. Mm-hmm. And I'm bringing stuff like this to doctors and they're like, well, we don't have any proof. Okay, doc. You are using a survey that you wrote yourself to assess your own success in a job where you don't have to find patients and actually treat them to get paid.
Yeah.
All right. When the real metric is how many of these guys are killing themselves. And if you look at that metric, there is no improvement. It's only getting worse, which means everything we're doing, all of it, isn't working.
Yeah. Well, let me ask about that metric real quick. Can you go back 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, 40 years? What's the point of comparison, compared to the last 20 years of war?
I think I have a chart up on my computer I could show you, but I'll just describe it to you. So
Yeah.
if you take the number of traumatic brain injuries, the number of combat injuries, and the number of service members deployed, and graph all three of them and lay them over the top of each other, they correlate perfectly.
Okay.
All right. Number one. Number two, if you look at the numbers of traumatic brain injuries prior to 2001, it's a consistent 5,000 for the whatever 5 or 7 years they tracked them.
Okay.
2001 hits, it goes up to 7,000, then 8,000, then 9, then 15, then 25. And in 2011, there's 45,000 traumatic brain injuries.
Wow.
Now, tooth to tail, combat fighter to last support guy is 10 to 1.
Okay.
All right? In 2011, we had 450,000 service members deployed.
Uh-huh.
If the tooth to tail is 10 to 1, that's 45,000 combat fighters on the ground. 40,000 people got traumatic. We'll call it 35,000. We'll take the 5,000 off. This is service-wide numbers.
Uh-huh.
Okay. 40,000 traumatic brain injuries is like 9/10 of the combat power.
Yeah, right.
This is why guys don't get treated. Number one, if I get blown up, I'm unconscious, my body snaps adrenaline, and I wake up. Unless there's a medical provider standing outside the window of the vehicle,
Right.
observing the momentary loss of consciousness, which signals this much larger injury.
Yeah.
All right. Once these guys come to, I've been at many IEDs. They've not really come to.
Oh,
I've
for
never
sure.
spoken to anybody who's making any fucking sense
For sure.
after getting blown up.
Yeah.
They think they are. It's like being drunk. The first IED I was at, my team leader, there's 2 team leaders in the infantry squad. My other buddy who was in the truck was sitting on a rock, drooling mouth to ground. And I said, hey, like they were a QRF and now we were a QRF to go help the guys that they got blown up trying to go help.
Uh-huh.
And I'm like, hey man, like you're alive. He couldn't respond. He wouldn't look at me. He couldn't focus. And I almost took his gun. That's what I got trained in combat lifesaver. Somebody's in shock. I thought he was in shock.
Yeah.
No, he was concussed.
Yeah.
There was another guy wandering around. There was another guy like smoking a cigarette, like no gear on, just like wandering around. Out of those 3 guys, one was so severely injured, I didn't see him again until I went to the Q course. And I went to Walter Reed, made a special trip from North Carolina to Walter Reed when I PCS to go see him. He was there 8 months later. The other 2 guys, one fractured his arm. The other one was the guy that was drilling. They got on a helicopter, were evac, and sent back 3 days later. And then this is what started this whole blastology thing. I had 2 guys in the infantry. One of them, Will, was the driver. They got hit like a click from the fob, took out 1/3 of our Humvees. There was a team in contact. There was like 3 guys went back to fob. There's nobody on the base. This dude, I found him 8 hours later sitting on his bunk smoking a cigarette.
Wow.
And I was like, what are you doing here?
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, I don't know. Wouldn't have mattered. They sent the other 2 guys right back anyway. So there's no treatment for these injuries, not even like a couple days off. And I get it. Like you get blown up, you get mad. You just want to go kill the dudes. And by the way, we're not playing kickball. Like my friends need me. There's not another one of me just waiting, ready to go that can be plugged in.
Yeah.
So there's a feeling of obligation, and guys are expecting their arms to be blown off, their face to be missing, to die, a horrible death, not feel good. Like not feeling good is not a reason to come to work. We train to shoot with both hands, not because you might have an advantage using one hand around a corner over the other. It's because if this one's gone, I don't get the rest of the day off work. So all these guys, and I have a lot of numbers. I've geeked out about this. I found a report from the JIDO, Joint IED Defeat Organization, who I don't know how many IEDs they defeated, but they did keep track of how many were wounded.
Yeah.
And in 2016 and 2017 alone, if you go on the DoD casualty status webpage right now, they will report 52,143 wounded throughout the GWAT.
Okay.
If you look at
whether that's small arms fire, IED,
injuries total,
that seems like a low. Seems like a real low.
I'd say it's 10x low.
Yeah,
because this report that I got from the JIDO that was given to Congress said from IEDs alone in 2016 and 2017 there were 52,433, 300 more casualties.
Yeah.
In those just 2 years from just IEDs. The signature injury of the of the GWAT. That's from, DOD.
Yeah.
Everybody talking about it. Everybody knows it's the biggest, most common injury.
Oh, it was the enemy's weapon of choice. It was really the only weapon they had.
They've only awarded 1,300 Purple Hearts for traumatic brain injury. I think there's 500,000 wounded.
Yeah.
If you look at the DVBIC, Defense Veteran Brain Injury Research Center, they've treated 38,000-ish for traumatic brain injuries.
Yeah. Where are those Purple Hearts?
Where are the Purple Hearts?
This brings up a great point. So a good friend of mine, Hung Kao, retired Navy Special Operations Officer, Navy captain. So, Army Colonel equivalent. I know. Always got to help my Army buddies out with it.
You guys wear so many pictures. I can't keep straight.
Exactly. But Hung, he ran for Congress here against Senator Tim Kaine in the last election cycle. And I was one of Hung's instructors in Navy dive school. So I've known this guy for over 30 years now. Reputable guy, awesome guy. Part of his campaign, he talks about how he had been blown up by IEDs several times. And the political opponents and some of the pundits, they said, well, where's your Purple Heart? And it pissed me off to know, oh, man, I know. Doesn't that just make your blood?
It makes me mad enough to go to law school for 4 years as a complete idiot.
Yeah, exactly. So that pissed me off so bad because, number one, Hung's my teammate. And number two, people who say that, they have no freaking clue. You can be in a car accident and you could be killed. You could be maimed. You could be seriously injured. You could have minor injuries, or you could have no injuries at all. You could be in that car accident and have no injuries at all, and the person in the passenger seat next to you was killed or maimed or seriously injured. So to deny, but you were still in a car accident.
Yeah.
I
got a buddy who was a Navy MARSOC Raider, sole survivor of 8 Marines in a vehicle. If you look at him, you'd never tell. Now, if you talk to him, you're going to find out pretty soon that, it's not like talking to a normal person. I got a friend, Stuart, who lost half of his head. Luckily, he was training an ODA he was a Marine. He was training an ODA on 4-wheeler operations. Flooded, come and wash part of the trail out. This dude's doing 60 miles an hour on a trail he knows, and then hits this washed out part, flips his 4-wheeler. It looked like if you took a samurai sword and just went foop, so the whole right half of his head is missing. Luckily, he had an SF medic who looked at him and went, I could fix that, and saved his life. He lost the use of the left side of his body. He's, pretty normal. When you talk to him, there are some, definite like speech difficulties and stuff, but like the brain is a redundant system with 86 billion redundancies. I mean, you're not connecting one neuron to one neuron. You're connecting like this to each neuron to, dozens, as I understand it. Again, doctors, if I'm wrong, dozens or hundreds, whatever.
So let's move into the Purple Heart component of this, because that really that strikes a nerve with a lot of people.
I'm gonna fix it.
Were you awarded a Purple Heart?
I was.
Okay.
So we were injured in 2012, a year after the regulation changed. Now, we were lucky because there's an NPR article talking about the doctors conspiring to prevent service members from getting Purple Hearts because they didn't want to create another John Kerry. They didn't want to just give out a Purple Heart for any old thing. We call that professional jealousy, where I'm from. And also dereliction of duty and disobeying a lawful order, which is if somebody's injured in combat, you give them a Purple Heart. And so real quick, I just want to talk about the importance of the Purple Heart. Number one, it costs the government nothing except for the cost of the ribbon. All right. The only things you get from having a Purple Heart are, number one, you get to wear your biggest mistake on your shirt when you go to work, which is kind of weird. I should preface this by saying, like, the Purple Heart isn't even an award. It's in a category all by itself. The next closest thing is the Prisoner of War Medal. I can get awarded a Purple Heart if I'm cowering, if my friend shoots me, if I'm overweight, if I failed my last 3 schools. If I'm in combat and I get wounded, I get a Purple Heart. That is what the presidential order that established the Purple Heart as a recognition for wounds does.
I'm reminded of that MASH episode where I forget who the character was, but MASH, all based on the Korean War. He got an eggshell in his eye, in the galley, in the chow hall.
Did he get a Purple Heart?
And he put himself in for a Purple Heart. And so that was the whole thing about the episode.
I mean, we had a young female get struck by a piece of shrapnel in the knee, broke the skin, Purple Heart. That was when I was air defense. I have no heartburn over that.
Yeah, me neither. Shit hurts.
Yeah, I'd never been shot. Luckily, I've never taken shrapnel. I don't want to. Everybody who's done it tells me it sucks.
I got fragged in the side of the head in Japan. Not in a war zone or anything, but
still hurts, right?
Still hurt, and I still had to get treated for it. And
yeah, well, kind of my biggest problem with this is the military's like, what? We didn't know that blast is bad. Like, we've been running tests, since the atomic age.
Yeah.
What happens when you put humans near
for sure
explosives?
Well, and then we have what are called K factors. Within EOD, we call it blast and frag, right? And I'm sure you're familiar with that too. So there's a blast pressure wave that is generated when high explosives in particular detonate. And there are known safe distances based on the quantity and type of that explosive. And now in the war zone, it's really hard to, sit there with your calculator.
You don't have a tape measure.
Yeah, exactly. You can't really do the math.
All right.
And that's
on your butts.
Yeah. And I know in EOD, that's where a lot of guys got rattled is they were way, danger close, right? They were way closer than we would normally be in a peacetime environment. But in war, you do what you got to do. Yeah.
This brings up an important point for me that I like to talk about here, which is a frag grenade, a regular frag grenade. If you go look in the manual, it will tell you that the kill radius is 15 meters on each side of that device. That device contains 1/2 pound of composition B, a good explosive, fast explosive chain, really pushy, snappy.
Brisance.
Yeah.
We call it brisance. That's snappy.
That's what it is. Okay.
Yeah,
I learned a new word today.
Yeah.
Kill radius of 15 meters. An average anti-tank mine has 12 to 15 pounds of a similar explosive.
Mm-hmm.
An average HME IED, being homemade explosive, similar to what was used at the Oklahoma City bombing, the most deadly terrorist attack behind 9/11.
That's right.
Same explosive they're using over there.
Nitrogen-based fertilizer and fuel oil is what we call it. Ammonium nitrate or ANFO, ammonium nitrate and fuel oil.
Yeah, they were using the fertilizer we gave them, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
They should have been growing opium with that, I think.
Yeah.
Anyway, so the one that hit our truck was 100 pounds, was what the EOD guy said. I don't know how accurate. I was also blown out.
Well,
you don't look at an EOD guy be like, hey, it's 87 pounds. All right, man. I don't know. It was a lot. I should be dead. So you have, I looked at a RAND study, 77,000 vehicles destroyed by IEDs. That puts 77,000 times the 5 people in a vehicle within the danger range of an explosive that has a much larger danger range than from the back wheel to the front seat of the truck.
For sure.
So I think we're undercounting by factors of 10. That's the total number of wounded. And this is important for a couple of reasons, 3 reasons. The first reason is if we don't have a true accounting of the cost and blood and sacrifice to run even a low intensity conflict, the next time a conflict runs around, we won't budget for it,
Mm-hmm.
Which is what's happened this time. We have there's maybe 100 beds for TBI patients that use a protocol that requires months of treatment. Mark's Institute's a month, Tampa's 3 months. I actually left early because I got mad at them, but I was there almost 90 days at a cost of astronomical. And I'll bring this into the stem cell. My answer to this is the stem cell treatment I'll talk about here in a little bit, and that what I started what we're doing with the nonprofit to provide for guys, which is cheap, it's fast, and you could give it to the number of people that are actually injured. So everybody's looking at the problem going, well, if we have all these people, we can't treat them. We can't even treat the ones we have. I got a solution to that, guys. Hang on. So, we've awarded 1,300 Purple Hearts as of 2011 when they stopped keeping track. By the way, there's 1,600 Purple Hearts for amputees. We know how many amputees there are. We don't know how many Purple Hearts there are.
Mm-hmm.
Makes you wonder if there's a reason why we don't know. Oh, stop keeping track. Maybe because they know the numbers are off. So you have all these people that need treatment that are killing themselves that conveniently have a set of symptoms on a Venn diagram that fit very neatly with PTSD, which we have a robust system of treating PTSD that I've done all of it. I talked about my feelings. I played with horses.
Right.
Me, a Navy SEAL and a Delta Force guy, played with horses. I drew pictures. I talked about my feelings. All right. I did everything they told me to do. And I didn't just not get better. I got worse for 4-5 years until I stopped all the medications they gave me. I was on anti-seizure medications, which was one of the only things that helped. I'm on testosterone now. That's the one thing that I got left over in supplements. I drink methylene blue every day. And then this stem cell treatment that I got just randomly out of heaven.
So let's talk about that, because that's how you and I got to know each other. And just for some background there, I had reconstructive surgery in my lower back 10, almost 11 years ago. And the surgery was great for about 5 years. And then things really started to go bad. And next month, and stay tuned for an update on this, but next month I'm leaving the country to have a stem cell therapy that cannot be done in the United States. But the place I'm going to, which I'll reveal later, is famous for having tremendous results, not only with service members, but with athletes and other people, cancer patients as well. This place is well known for treating cancer patients. So through a mutual friend, we came in contact with each other. And so stem cell was really our point of entry of having a discussion. And so I'm going to have mitochromal. Is that how you say it?
If there's any doctors listening, but I think it's machismal.
Machismal. Okay, good. So machismal stem cells that will be injected directly into my spine where the damaged area is, in my case, lower L4, L5, S1 area, but then also as an IV treatment. And the stem cell procedure that you now make available to people and that you received yourself is somewhat different. So if now's the time to get into that, let's do that.
Yeah, this is actually, I think, the perfect time. Okay, so I'm at the end of my rope. Tried everything. Literally, I would have set my face on fire and put it out with a rake if the doctors told me it would make me feel better. I listened to everything they said, and I'm just.
What year is this roughly now?
This is 2018.
Okay.
I'm suffering from crushing depression.
Okay.
At times, severe pain, headaches, migraines. Memory loss, the point where, luckily me and my wife got it figured out early, but she'd make plans. We'd make plans, and 5 minutes later, I wouldn't remember, and so she, for a while thought I was crazy until we kind of, figured it out. And I mean, these irritable outbursts are some of the hardest things to deal with because I had young kids. So, stuff I don't even want to talk about, yelling at my kids in a way that I would yell at another Green Beret. Breaking furniture in my house and like not having any memory of why I was so angry moments afterward. And this is before I knew about any of the seizure stuff. I did not know what was going on. I felt like I'd lost my mind. I tell people, like I said earlier, I felt like an animal. No ability to draw on memories from the recent past to plan for even the near future. It was a constant right now. If I was hungry, I needed food. If I needed to sleep, I needed it now. I could not handle distractions. I mean, so far from, bless you, from the Green Beret that I was to this, failure had crept in the system. Then it became a pattern. Then it became a standard. And, I contemplated the fact that, like, are you just making this up? Are you crazy? Do you have PTSD? And I started thinking, well, it would be weird that I caught PTSD on my 5th deployment the same day that I got blown up. And the things I'm hearing from the psych doctors are just, they don't add up. I don't feel bad about it. I don't feel bad about, trying to get somebody to stop shooting at me. Even if I did it by shooting at them. I was scared, I think, I like, I know some people say they were never scared. It's terrifying. Can you do it? Sure. But it's terrifying. And I never enjoyed it. I always enjoyed the training. I enjoyed the people, but all of a sudden, like, the joy is gone. It's a grind. I'm suffering daily. I can't get anything done. I can't read an email and respond to
hopelessness. Had
hopelessness. Hits. I'm gonna be like really frank, and I kind of went back and forth on talking about this on a podcast because my kids might listen to it, but I think this is important. But I'd gotten to the point where it was less hopelessness and more that I started to feel like my family would be better without me. I was spending money on medical treatments. I was leaving to go see doctors, which was like really the only time my family got a break from me. There was no joy in anything. There was no excitement. I was not happy. I was not sad. I was just completely flat. I don't know. You went to SEER school, right? You feel after SEER, you're just flat, like no emotions, like nothing in the tank. I'm still doing all the stuff. I'm going to the Warrior Games. I go to the train up, I come back, and I'm an asshole for 2 weeks because I'm exhausted. I sleep 12, 14 hours a day. I'm not helping out around the house. I can barely peel my ass out of bed. I'm not working out other than, shooting arrows, which that was even just a way to, get me away from my family. And really, like, when I look back at how I got better, like I went back through adolescence. It's weird. I said, okay, well, this archery is the closest to all the therapies I'm doing. I have to it was a constant state of anxiety, just anger all the time, exhausting anger. But when I shot a bow, I had to breathe a certain way. And this got me into like yoga and yogic breathing. And I had to put the same Pink Floyd song, Lay Down and Relax, just to get to a level where I could shoot accurately. And I saw a great benefit in that. And it was actually at the Warrior Games in 2018 that I was sitting there watching all my friends with no legs run races, which I'm going to tell you, if you can watch that and not cry, like the beauty of somebody getting their legs blown off, being told by a doctor, you're never going to run again. They're like, you know what? Not only am I going to run, I'm going to race other people with no legs. I think that's like the most beautiful.
You ever watch Paralympic hockey?
All kinds of Paralympic stuff, yeah.
So Paralympic hockey is the most incredible thing. It's the most watched Paralympic sport. And because we were talking about hockey earlier, and through my association with a few organizations, I get to spend some time with gold medal winning Paralympians. It is cool, but I know exactly what you're saying about these guys who say, I'm going to go out there and crush it. I'm absolutely going to
do the best. I played seated volleyball. I played wheelchair basketball. My legs were fine, but my friends' legs were not fine. And I said, okay, there's not enough people with no legs to play on a basketball team. Like, they're my friends. Like, I want to give them an and let me tell you something, I got my ass whooped by some wheelchair basketball. I mean, you can't even start to begin to see how these guys can do the
same thing. Getting in a sled. I got in a sled to play sled hockey with these people who have, severe disability.
They ate your lunch.
Oh man, they crushed me.
And they're not nice about it, dude. The handicapped are some of the meanest people because they.
Yeah. Well, I look like an idiot in that sled though too. I mean, but totally get it. Please though, continue on.
So, when I won the Invictus Games, the guy came over to interview me, and he said something he hadn't really thought out. He was not wounded, but he comes over and he's like, I'm an athlete. I understand what it's like to put your life on hold to get ready for an event like this. Tell us what you did to get ready for this event. Now, I looked at him and I said, man, dude, this is the only team you never want to see your friends on. If you're on this team, something so bad happened that this is all you got left. And this is what we get up for. This is why, just to beat the odds, just to defeat, somebody telling us we can't, this is all we got left. This is not a great place to be. It's a good day. I'm grateful for winning. I don't feel it. If you wanted a fair contest, you'd have to hurt us equally, give us 5 years. And then, you could say I beat somebody. I didn't really beat anybody here. I just happened to be the dude that had the most time to practice. And there's so much that you lose getting out of the military, as I don't know, mine was an unplanned accident, and that's like a motorcycle accident, but the part where you hit the curb, and so I did it because I was like, I need more than an hour of therapy a week. I can do this 6 hours a day, and I can reorient my eyes are crossed, my brain's broken, I'd fall over when I turn left, like I'm like Zoolander. I have to train my body to do all these things. And I said, okay, well, I'm sitting there watching the guys in no legs run, and I go, okay, what is the equivalent of that for a dude with a head injury? Because I could go run.
Wow. What a great question.
Yeah. And I said, I got to go back to school. Ugh, I'm terrible at school. I've got a GED, and I was like, all right, fine. I'll go back to school because I need to reassemble this thing one neuron at a time. That's why I played golf. Golf was a great indicator for me. My handicap jumped 10 points after I got blown up. I went from like a 13 to a 25. I was shooting like 120. It was the craziest thing.
Some people consider that a good score.
I was shooting regularly like high 80s, and then I went up to I would shoot 112 and I'd be furious.
Yeah.
Because I just no balance, no coordination. But I decided on school, so I finished up my undergrad at Fayetteville Tech through the SOF education program. I went into business because I was like, well, nobody's going to hire a dude that's got to go to the doctor every week and has migraines and maybe can't call in. I said, but I'd hire me. I know what I can do. And if I start a business, I can kind of choose my own level of involvement and take it as far as, I can handle. And as I'm doing that, and I'm sucking pretty bad. I'm hurting. I'm getting migraines doing the work. Like it was terrible.
What business did you start?
We CBD. We buy hemp from, a place out in Colorado, consortium, and we process it into tinctures, lotions.
You still operate that business today?
Okay, well, my wife mostly does all the operations.
Do you know Dr. Johnny Garcia?
No, off the top of my head.
No. Do you know LaTanya Warren? Okay, I'm going to introduce you to some folks, but please continue.
Yeah, what I found was that both cannabis and CBD, which are anti-seizure agents, gave me relief. I hadn't smoked weed since I was a kid, and I was actually a buddy in a wheelchair who, was using it for nerve pain. He's like, maybe try it. And I was like, all right, man, I get it. You're in a wheelchair. You just want to excuse to smoke weed. And so I tried some, and, I was around my wife, and she's like, go get more. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, it's illegal. Like, I'm not going to, I haven't been doing this and she was like, this makes you more like the old you. And I said, okay. So, because the side effects of cannabis are, so you lose faculties, we, lean towards CBD, and that's something that I use regularly. Helps me study, helps me. I'm not sure exactly the mechanism, but some of the side effects of THC and CBD are enhancements, not necessarily the things that are side effecty, like disorientation stuff. Some of it is anti-seizure property, which, those are the only things that ever helped me. That and the ketogenic diet developed in the 1920s to treat children with epilepsy to prevent seizures by using a high-fat diet. So you eat 70 to 90% of your caloric intake and fat. That I had success with that. Anything anti-seizure I had success with. So we still run that business.
Did you ever take pregabalin or Lyrica?
I may have taken Lyrica, but I did take gabapentin.
Gabapentin's the other one, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I did not.
Gabapentin's the higher dose. Well, gabapentin is Lyrica. That's what it is. Right. So, and the only reason I ask is, in all of my searching for pain relief, those were things that were prescribed in the past, and they just, man.
I tell you what, I did ketamine last November, and So I will come right out and say, like, I'm not going to fly to Guatemala to do federally illegal drugs with a dude with an internet shaman certificate. I'm not eating ayahuasca. I'm not doing ibogaine. That's just me. I hear good things from other people. And so I was a little hesitant to try the ketamine. And a good friend of mine talked me into it. So I did a 2 milligram per kilogram dose at 4 hours, which is a pretty low dose. It was like a Pink Floyd laser light show. Like I didn't meet the guys that Joe Rogan's talking about.
Yeah.
Although I hear at higher doses, it could do something similar.
Yeah.
I didn't have that experience, but what I did find out is that when I stood up, the first time, I could not believe the pain relief. I mean, I had no pain. And that's the first time since I was a child.
And that's ketamine.
Ketamine.
Yeah.
did it at a clinic. Task Force Dagger.
Yeah, dude, they're helping me with my trip. As a matter of
fantastic organization.
Yeah. They did offer me that ketamine treatment as well, which after I do the stem cell outside the U.S., depending on how that goes, the ketamine is an option for me going forward. And I know an EOD guy who has got like 100% relief with that.
I stood up with 100% relief. I would say it settled at like 80% relief. I'm a little more than a year out, and I'd say I have 50% relief.
I'll take that
a year later. I'm telling you. So I got fibromyalgia, which is Latin for we don't know why you're hurting. And they're like, well, I won't get down that rabbit hole, but yeah. So ketamine, I believe the safety profile is okay on it. If you're in a lot of pain, I was supposed to do 4 treatments for 4 hours. I only did 3. The last time I did it, I didn't like it. I was like, I didn't like the way it made me feel.
Okay. Was that here in Virginia Beach?
Just here in Virginia Beach. I had to go to the bathroom and I couldn't, like I was too messed up to go pee.
Okay.
Yeah, you're not amped up. You're like,
okay.
Couldn't move. And I was like, hey, get this out of me. I want to go pee. Like, I'm not going to have some strange lady like help me pee in a bucket. I was like, I'll pee on my own. So I didn't do the 4th, which was what was recommended. I don't know if that's there for profit. So maybe they try and get you to do 4, but with the 3, I still 50% improvement a year later. I would consider doing it again.
Yeah.
I just don't really like it.
Yeah. If I had to do that, cause I was doing the pain management shots, actually I'm still on the protocol. So once every 3 months I get a C-arm, and they do the deep spine injection, and that works great, but it only lasts for a month.
That kills the nerve.
And it kills the nerve. And like I had early stage cataracts in both eyes because that heavy dose of corticosteroid causes cataracts. So there's all these complications. And if that shot was more efficient and didn't have those side effects, I'd probably keep doing that. But if this ketamine thing, if I did that once every couple of years or 3 years, I'll take anything over another surgery. That surgery, man,
I don't know that I'll ever have surgery again.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, almost regardless of the circumstance. What I call myself a blastologist. Like the things I learned actually are the things that got me to go back to church. Like restored my faith in God, like seeing how my body works, seeing how it responds and the things that it responded to, it falls into miracle territory, which is why it upsets me when people are like, you don't have any proof. Like, you're right.
Dude, falls into miracle territory. That's compelling.
I'm screaming this treatment from the rooftops. I spoke to the head of the SOCOM Care Coalition last week, and he's doing some investigation on it. It's what I hope to give to my friends to stop the suicides. I'm telling you, they're seizures. I don't like to, bring up certain situations with certain people, but there are guys that I've known for a long time that I put them on my top 5 list. They're break glass and case of war dudes, and they kill themselves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'll do a little quick. In the last 5 years, 3 acquaintances and a friend have committed, the 3 acquaintances committed suicide, and the 4th attempted, and survived because the round didn't go off. Pulled the trigger, firing pin dented the primer, and the round didn't go off.
Wow.
And a revolver.
Wow.
So those 3 guys kill themselves, and none of them fit the profile. Every single one of them are doing, as far as I know, the right things. They're involved in the community. One of them still working at a high level of, the same type of work that he's doing, being general intentionally. All 3 of them killed themselves. As I understand it, in potentially 2 of the situations, it was the wife issue there. Mm-hmm. I can't confirm, but that's what I got through the grapevine. The 4th,
what were those 3 things again? You said one is
wife leaving them, losing your job, or somebody wants to fight you.
Okay. All right. Continue, please.
And those that's not an exclusive list. That's just what I've got.
Yeah.
So, in between that last guy killing himself, and I'm looking at all 3 of these guys, and I'm like, there's no way you could you could tell me that dudes with these types of injuries, serious injuries, you know, doing podcasts, writing books about resiliency, and that they, you know, up and just blow their head, they just can't take it anymore. They wrote a book about how to take it. You know, they know that.
Mike Day, you familiar with Mike Day?
So Mike Day is the third of the three, and I know very little about him, so I do not want to speak out of school about Mike, but I can tell you some things that I know just.
Have you read his book?
Source? I've not.
I recommend it, dude. Especially being a blastologist and the stuff that you're doing. Yeah. It number one, it'll validate everything you're saying, and it'll probably shed some new light on, you know, the research road that you're on.
I'll check it out.
Yeah.
You know, Mike is an interesting case because he was shot so many times, and what a lot of people don't know is
27 times.
You can get traumatic brain injuries from gunshot wounds as far away as the abdomen. All right, you have two types of injury when you get shot. It's permanent cavitation. That's the tissue torn by the projectile as it passes through the target. And then there's temporary cavitation, which is the pressure wave that emanates and travels through the tissue, blood, liquid in the body. Like if you see a slow motion shot of a deer being shot, you can see that pressure wave come out, and that's why they fall over. Not because you hit them in the heart. You're knocking them out from that pressure wave.
It's a concussive force, basically. Yeah.
You know, and what I know about a lot of guys with missing limbs and gunshot wounds is there's no TBI treatment. Doctors love a missing limb. I mean, I'm not trying to be flippant, but I could put a new one on.
Yeah.
That's easy. I just, for this flap here. So I know I'm being, you know, overly generalizing. The recovery is traumatic and long-term. And I know a lot of people with no legs and they put a new one on. And I'm like, did you get any TBI? And they're like, no. Because the doctor looks thing missing, you know, there's never been a misdiagnosis for an amputation. No doctor has ever said, well, we think you didn't grow the limb, you know, but you have a TBI and you show up and you're like, oh, I got blown up. They're like, well, I mean, you look fine. And so they blow these dudes off, left, right, and center. So where were we?
Oh, okay. So
here we go.
Yeah.
Moment.
Dex, we'll make a little correction here. We're at 2:13:30. So let's go back to damn, dude. We're so dudes who take their lives. Oh, yeah.
These guys, all right. These three guys kill themselves. Again, I don't want to speak for them. I don't know them. You know, I didn't even want to bring Mike's name up into it because I know that I don't know everything about his situation. But in between, those three left me confused. I was like, how can these three guys, you know, that it doesn't make sense to me. And then I read this study about the seizures for Alzheimer's patients. And then my friend has the attempt, and I call him after we get through, you know, crying and, you know, just grateful to be able to talk to each other again. This is a regular Army guy that I'd met in the hospital. Like he was on my fob, just randomly happened to be the mortarman on my fob. I invited him over when I would shoot rounds because it was just me sometimes. And it's always nice to have somebody double check your math when you're shooting something that goes 7 kilometers away. And we ended up at the hospital together, and he has this attempt. And I said, look, man, I understand he was fighting with his wife. I said, I understand you have a bunch of feelings about what you were fighting about, but I need you to tell me how you felt from the time you woke up until the time you had the attempt. And he recited to me, unprompted, exactly how I felt the days that I would have these irritable outbursts. It wasn't every day, but I would wake up and I would know that it was going to happen. And, you know, by noon I'd pop, and then I'd go hide in my bedroom. And, you know,
did you use alcohol at all as part of a self-treatment?
So I got a lot of alcoholism in my family. I was sober for 10 years. I drank a little bit at the end of my career after I got blown up. Actually, the day we got blown up, I got fucking hammered. The Romanians gave us some Palinka. I don't really remember it. I fell and like had a scrape on my face apparently because we were drinking like 6 hours after we got blown up. I know that's probably not good. Probably the worst thing you could do. But, you know, I had to call my wife and my parents and be like, look, you know, if somebody comes to the house or notifies you that I've been injured, I need you to know I'm okay. Like I'm getting a Purple Heart, but it wasn't that wasn't that big of a deal.
Yeah.
I didn't want to worry them.
Yeah.
I hated having to make that phone call, but somebody contacted one of the other people on the team before he'd contact his wife. And so we all had to let everybody know. But, so TBI, I'm starting.
Another quick edit. We've been at it for a long time, man.
I'm good if you're good.
Yeah. No. We got a little ways to go. So your buddy, we're talking about.
Okay. Okay. So Chris describes the seizure to me perfectly, and I had an epiphany. I was like, that could explain. That could make what happened to these three guys make sense in my head. That they were not in the driver's seat.
Mm-hmm.
I've been not in the driver's seat, and we'll take this to where I was right before I got these stem cells. And at this point, I had Googled what would happen to my family if I killed myself. I didn't want to kill myself. I told the doctors that I was suicidal because I was scared I would do it in a moment of uncontrolled, like I was having.
Uh-huh.
And, but it was never like an attractive idea to me. I never understood suicide. And that, part of it was like, I don't know how much longer I can take this. And when you ask me what I could take, it's what I was doing to my family. So the side effects of killing yourself are increased risk of suicide for your family members, decreased financial support. I'm the breadwinner, higher rates of depression, higher rates of drug use. And I looked at all those and I said, I think that a chance at that is better than whatever is going to happen if somebody like me stays around my family. And at that time, a good friend of mine, Jeff Dardia, Task Force Dagger guy, was the guy that talked me into the ketamine, calls me. He's like, hey, we got a doctor that wants to do a stem cell treatment for 3 soft guys. Would you like that? And I said, yeah, my knees and my shoulders are killing me. Absolutely. So I sent him the x-rays. I finally get on the phone with the doctor. I'm actually at an archery tournament, so I'm trying to get it off the phone with him. But he's a for-profit doctor who wants me to know what he's going to do and what the benefits are. And so we talk about my knees and shoulders, and then he tells me about another treatment that he does that he'd done on a guy with a stroke, and that cured. He'd lost the sense of taste and smell in the use of the left-hand side of his body. He said he gave him this treatment. He got some of the use back, but he also got his sense of taste and smell back. And I was like, hey man, could we do that one instead of my knees and shoulders? I can live with the pain, but this, I got a head injury, bro. And it's really bad.
Uh-huh.
And he's like, well, that one's $15,000 and the other one's $3,000. And I was like, cool, man.
And how is this treatment administered?
I'll get to that in just a second.
Okay. All right.
So, I'm leading right up to it. So I was like, could we please do this other one? He's like, you know what, man, screw it. It's $12,000 more. I don't know if he told me at the time or he told me later, but I didn't know that he was donating the treatment himself.
Okay.
So I fly up to New York. And at this point in my treatment,
Task Force Dagger put you onto this.
Operation Healing Forces.
Forces.
Task Force Dagger through Operation Healing Forces.
Gotcha.
Who was in cahoots with the doctor. And so at this point, I've been to the Cleveland Clinic, Marcus, all these things, hyperbaric chamber in Norfolk, stellate ganglion blocks. You know those ones that they go in and deaden the nerve that sends the fight or flight response.
Mm-hmm.
That a needle this long into the side of your neck. I did that 4 times.
Wow.
Lasts for 2 weeks. Same thing. It's a nerve deadening procedure. Dangerous, if you ask me, and not a lot of fun. So at this point, I kind of get my jollies on seeing that sad look in the doctor's eyes when the thing they promised me, I'd had the rug pulled so many times. Oh, this is going to fix you.
Mm-hmm.
Dude, hyperbaric chamber was horrible for me. It gave me headaches. Did not help. I think in a damaged system, when the whole system's damaged, I don't think you force oxygen into that.
Yeah.
For I think it's great.
Yeah, exactly. I did a 40-day protocol there, and I had at that time, I had a really bad knee problem. And it pretty much made that go away in a couple of days. A knee problem that I had for months. But anyway, so
I think it's great for that stuff.
yeah.
But I think if the whole system's destroyed by blast, you probably don't want to.
That's not your point.
You know, if you got a leak
Treat.
in a cylinder, you don't hit the nitrous button.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So you're up in New York?
Now I fly to New York. The procedure goes like this. They go in through your iliac crest, which, you know, where your rucksack hits your pelvis.
Okay.
It's just towards the spine from that.
Okay.
Lidocaine bone corkscrew. They just screwed in. I got videos. I'll show you when we get done. Pulls out about a Red Bull can of bone marrow. Patch that up. They take the bone marrow, blood filter it, which I think is just a UV light, centrifuge, and they showed it to me last time. I thought it was going to be the whole jar would be stem cells. There's a layer of about 3 billion stem cells in between the bone marrow and I believe it's plasma.
Yeah.
Right.
So why they spin it, right?
Yeah. So they get that layer. That layer comes out. Half of it goes into an IV and the other half goes right up your nose. You lay down, nostrils up. They put a tampon on the end of a syringe and they just titrate it, slowly drip it into your nostrils as you're laying down, and it absorbs. You breathe through a nebulizer first to open your sinuses up.
Okay.
That's it.
So the nasal, that's absorption directly into the brain,
goes
basically?
straight into the brain.
Yeah.
I didn't have a bloody booger. There was no smell. There was no pain. Painless procedure. I did have pain at the site, but now we've treated 4 other guys with it, and they're all like, "You're a baby." I didn't feel anything, so I don't know. Maybe I'm just sensitive, delicate flower. But painless procedure, and I'm not thinking much. You know, I've done everything. Now I'm into the things that aren't named and haven't been tried. I called it live tissue testing. That's how I became a blastologist. You want to know? I did live tissue testing using myself as the experiment, doing everything any doctor could come up with to the best of my ability for as long as I could handle it. And
when did you have this procedure?
This procedure, the first time in 2018.
Okay.
So I had it twice.
Okay.
So 2018, I get it. The doctors chased me around for like a testimonial video, and for 8 months, I won't do it. I said, "Look, man, I'm not going to ask my friends. Like, you maybe don't understand how it feels to ask somebody to pay $10,000 for a treatment for you.
Sure.
It's not a good feeling.
Yeah.
You know, you don't want to take money from people if you don't need it or if it's not going to work." And, you know, the results were immediate for me. I woke up, or I didn't wake up. I went down to the lobby. I called my wife and I told her I just feel a little better. And I did. I said, I don't know if it's pink cloud or, you know,
placebo,
just a little placebo, but I flew home that night. I got in my car, put it in the right lane. There was no, you know, the imaginary timeline that was gone. The anxiety I had with driving was gone. And then it fluctuated for the first year. I still had, I think, a few seizures during that first year. Had still periods of depression, but they were further apart. The depression was not as bad. I didn't feel like killing myself anymore. I saw a light at the end of the tunnel. I didn't realize how bad I was. If you would have asked me at the time, I would have said, I'm probably 50%. You ask me now, I was 1 to 2. Like I wasn't doing 100th of what I'm doing now.
Mm-hmm.
I was exhausted and in a horrible mood. Then I had that done. I started calling guys that I served with that had TBIs that I knew were blown up. And the thing that got me was my grenadier that was in that first IAD. He told me he wasn't doing good. He told me that he went to the VA and asked to see a neurologist, and they said no because he had no proof of the injury. And man, I got mad. So I started calling some lawyers like, hey, we got to get this dude a Purple Heart. I don't know how to do this. They basically laughed at me. There's no money in it. There's no value in a Purple Heart other than a good friend of mine, Jana Marcel Brooks. I hope I said her name right. Who was on a similar path, getting Purple Hearts for her husband and some other guys. Did a study that I participated in that correlated a traumatic brain injury and lack of a Purple Heart with a higher suicide rate. So the intrinsic value is that somebody knows they're hurt and that it's a physical injury and their feelings didn't get hurt. They don't need to talk about it. You can't out-talk a traumatic brain injury.
Mm-hmm.
It's not going to help.
Right.
You need to heal. You need to reconnect neurons and recoat them with myelin. And this, you know, is where this treatment comes in. Okay. It takes 30 years for my body to naturally assemble the brain, to accumulate the materials and put them together in the incredibly complex 86 billion neuronal connection system that we have between our ears. Most important 6 inches on the battlefield, if you ask anybody who wears any rank.
For sure.
And that process kind of ends when you're 30. Your brain only builds it once. But if you injure it, good friend of mine who works with a lot of disabled people had a guy that serious head injury from a ski event. She said 18 years later, she was talking to him. He said, I just am now starting to feel normal again. And it occurred to me, that's weird. The exact same amount of time it takes for us to trust the brain to pick where it eats and sleeps, thing that makes it adult, it was that same period of time. Okay, well, now he's got another 12 years to go to get that done.
You know, just real quick, there's a book called Strength to Strength. I don't know if you heard about it or read it, but it talks about the site. It talks about like Darwin and, you know, people who made major discoveries. And it lists a lot of people, but like the age of 25 to 35 was the heyday for most of these brilliant people. You know, the brain declines after that point. Yeah.
We stop myelinating at 40.
Yeah. Okay.
By the science.
Okay.
So I have 86 billion neural connections. By the science, you can lose half of them. So I have 43 billion neural connections, and I'm in need of 43 billion more. In addition to those 43 billion neural connections, I need 360 degrees of myelin coating, or I'm getting a 1% improvement. All right. So when you're thinking about all these treatments like therapies, we're telling the brain where to grow together, which neurons to go together first, right? Cool. We're not coating the neurons again in myelin. All right. So we're not increasing the speed of healing. We're just directing what gets healed first. Then you get the stem cell treatment that puts in 1.5 billion stem cells. You get 3 billion out of the extraction. Half goes into the IV. The other half goes up your nose. Those stem cells, as I understand it, multiply 5 times a day for 5 years. Now we're starting to get to the math that we need to have to reassemble the brain. And I'm 5 years out. The first year, it was touch and go. It was about 8 months where I was like, oh man, yes, I checked everything off the list. Could this be from this? Nope. It happened the right way too many times. Could it be that I was just, this is trauma from childhood? Nope. This happened right too many times. When your realizer stops working, you don't realize all the things that aren't happening anymore. Your reality changes. And so
unless you're real conscious and taking notes but even that.
And I did. I have, put together all these podcasts that I heard. Okay, this works this way. Okay, sulforaphane reduces oxidative stress. If my oxidative stress is reduced, I can heal more quickly. But then we're looking at a factor of 30 years. Okay, well, it takes me 28 years to heal instead of 30. That's an unacceptable timeline. Guys are killing themselves. They get to max punishment long before that 30 years. Or a seizure coincides with a pre-TSD event, adrenaline-fueled seizure occurs, and guys are killing themselves.
Yeah, wow.
And I was right there. So, the first year was a little touch and go. I'm trying to get these guys help with the Purple Hearts. I get mad. I go to law school. Nightmare. All right. I was mad that I was saluting guys with a bachelor's degree when I found out how hard that was. It was not. I was like, this is it. I got great grades. And then I went to law school, and I'm a pretty tough guy. There were points where I was in tears out of frustration with the volume and the complexity of the things that they want you to learn and the system they do it in. There's no homework in law school. You take one exam at the end of the semester, and if you pass it, you get a good grade. If you don't, you fail the class.
Yeah, right. Pass, fail. It's not ABCD.
It's not ABC. Yeah. So intentionally, it's meant to be like that. It's court. You got one try to come in here and read your book report the right way, and that determines the outcome. So there's supposed to be that stress and pressure. I almost dropped out the first semester. I told my advisor I was going to do that, and he said, why don't you just go part-time? And I was like, guys, I sent an application with pictures in it. Like, how often do you get that? Like, I told you I had a brain injury. Nobody thought, so I went down to part-time. It took me 4 years to get through law school, going to school year round. I finished second to last in my class. Hardest thing I've ever done. First thing I've ever done that I wasn't good at. I don't fit in. I'm not, the typical type of guy. But that went into my Reassembling My Brain one neuron at a time plan. I learned how to play the drums. Everything I've done since getting blown up was reassemble the brain. Well, this stem cell procedure is what gave me the energy to do all this. My memory's still improving. I'm still noticing tangible improvements 5 years later, which tracks with the science on the length of time that the stem cells multiply. Mm-hmm. So I got it again. Once I got into law school, I called the doctor back. I said, look, man, I can't really pay you $15,000 right now, but I'll pay you monthly, whatever I got to do. He said, don't worry about it. Come on up. I'm going to give it to you for free again. And so that's now the protocol that I'm trying to raise money for the guys that we're treating through the Blastology Foundation. We've treated.
So you have had a second treatment?
I've done it twice, a year apart. So that's
a year apart.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So I did it once. I did it again a year later. Right now, our first cohort of 2 guys has 6 months to go. I'm going to try and get them funded to do it again.
And have they seen notable improvement?
So I've done 4.
Okay.
Every single one of them reports improvement. My strongest metrics are, would you get it again? All 4 have said yes.
Okay.
Would you recommend it to a family member? All 4 have said yes.
Okay.
The improvements they're having are most strongly, you can see it best with we had a dude with MS. Blown up when he was 19. He's 37 now. He was having an MS flare-up right before we sent him. Neuropathy, Fugue states where he was, I hope I pronounced that right, where he was doing things over long periods. He didn't remember doing them. Interpersonal relationship difficulties to the point where he'd moved out of his house. He is back in his house now. He says he's doing fantastic. The rebound from the MS flare-up, he said, was the quickest he's had. But I think that's the biggest improvement.
Is the VA aware of this?
They are. They did a study down in San Antonio. Weird study. So when we talk about the procedure, there's 3 places I know of in America that you can get it. All right. One is in San Antonio. That study's probably closed now. They're using adipose tissue, so fat. So they get a liposuction. It's 3 procedures. It's the only procedure I've ever heard from the VA where they don't cover your travel to get there. And then you got a 50% chance of getting the treatment. Huh. There's another place down in Florida that's doing a study on the same thing. They do 3 treatments as well because, as I understand, I spoke to the doctor that's doing it. They're worried about the lidocaine affecting the stem cells. I don't know. There's no effect on mine. But they want to do 3 treatments, go down for 3 days, and that's $17,000. The guy that's doing it up in New York, Dr. Chris Calpi, he's the guy that donated it to me. Right now, what he's generously been doing is kind of giving me a 2-for-1. So because I can get funding for special operators, plenty of money for that, I do the special operator, and then he donates the treatment to the regular Army guy. I know dozens and hundreds of them that are injured as well. So that's our organization. Right now, we're all volunteers. We don't take any money. Every penny we get goes to treatments and to travel for the service members. I don't want them to have to pay anything. We're about to treat 2 more, and then I might have funding for a second 2 here coming up. But I'm hoping to go to SOCOM with it soon and just say, look, nothing else is working.
Yeah.
We have a treatment with a very safe profile.
This should, without a doubt, SOCOM, I mean, the VA should really take interest in this. And I'd be interested to know or help that doctor make contact with the right people within the VA, especially with this new administration.
Yeah, that's
which is very, very veteran focused. As a matter of fact, the new secretary of the VA, or the nominee, you realize his primary, he was.
Anybody listening to this, if you know that guy, if you know Pete Hegseth, look, here's the problem, and I don't mean to disparage VA doctors. They do the best they can.
I've had great success with the VA myself.
They're stuck in a system that says, here's what we got.
Yeah.
And without evidence, in some instances, we won't treat. Now, it's weird to me that they're using medications that there's no drug trial, because we can't diagnose this condition definitively until after death. There's no drug trial for them. So you're okay throwing darts with medications that have side effects like suicidal ideation.
Right.
But this is so innocuous. The worst thing that could happen is a bone infection.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's your worst case scenario.
So does this particular treatment, and again, this was kind of the nature of our discussion when we first met, so it really heals the brain, just to really summarize it. It heals and grows the brain.
It remyelinates the brain, preventing the seizure.
Okay. Does it do anything for physical pain?
So I would say that I got maybe 10 or 15% relief. Definitely noticeable relief, but pain is something I deal with.
Yeah.
Like you on a daily basis. I just get through it. It's a waste of energy. I think pain is probably the body asking for stem cells.
Yeah.
You could probably, when you break a bone, that's all you can think about. Like, I don't know. Does that help the body deliver repair material? I don't know, man. It feels like it could.
Pain is the body asking for stem cells. That's pretty,
that's what it seems
like. That's profound,
like,
man.
That seems like that's like, I'm a big, you've done things at a high level that are very dangerous where, mistakes equal death or worse, severe, disfigurement.
Yeah, it's called EOD.
Yeah. You have all your fingers, which is, obviously you're good at your job. But, we do these things mentally that people write books about them. I have a good friend that's, a breath coach, and she's like, oh, do this breath and that breath. And I'm like, okay.
What's her first name?
Emily Hightower.
Okay. That's her whole name. That's right. That's her phone.
Well, she's great.
Yeah.
She's
because I have a similar friend, and I believe in breath work like you wouldn't believe.
She works with Brian McKenzie Shift Adapt out in Carbondale, Colorado.
Okay.
She's great. Fantastic. I met her. I went on a wounded veteran ski retreat, and they're like, we're going to go do yoga. And I was like, bro, and they were like specifically breathing exercises. And at the time I'm like, bro, I've been breathing with 100% success rate now for 38 years. I don't really think. And after an hour session, I went up and grabbed her because, we did a box breath, and I was getting hypoxic. And I realized when I'm shooting, I'm getting hypoxic. And as you get hypoxic, your acuity drops. My visual acuity would be reduced, and my decision-making would get worse. And so I said, if I'm not organizing my breath and putting the energy where it needs to be before I need it in the shot, I'll get hypoxic and I'll let bad shots go. So I grabbed her. I said, hey, would you mind, I brought my archery trainer with me because I'd practice every day. And I said, would you mind just checking out my process and seeing if we can't tighten this up? And the next day she met me at 5 a.m. before we went skiing, and we became fast friends. And I started actually with Challenge Aspen military opportunities. If you guys are military wounded, check out Challenge Aspen military opportunities. They do ski trips. Fantastic organization. John Klanowski, who was the director of that organization at the time, is now the director of our one of the directors of our Blastology Foundation. So
okay.
Me and him and her started a retreat for veterans to do archery. And Emily was doing the yoga part, and we do our first trip. And at the end, she comes and she's like, well, I'm kind of mad that I didn't advocate for more time for breathing exercises. I said, how long do you do breathing at your hippie retreats? Mm-hmm. She's like, well, probably 2 hours. And I was like, okay, we shot bows for 8 hours, and they were breathing the way you told them to breathe the whole time. This is a breathing camp. It's not an archery camp.
That's
These
cool.
guys will now lay in a teepee with you and search their inner child for, answers, but they will breathe to get a good shot off. And so you just did 10 times the breathing training that even you get at your professional retreats.
And it's in a setting where it applies. You can see the benefit or the gain immediately. Cool. That's cool. Let me go back to something real quick. Yeah. So when you were talking about, you got a little bit emotional. You were talking about how, you weren't sure if you wanted to say all this because your family would see this. And I think it's great that your family sees this and they fully understand your journey, and your healing. And I think it's awesome. But you saw the decline. You knew there was a decline. You thought maybe my family's better off without me. You knew that not something was off, everything was off, right? And you struggled, and I'm paraphrasing, man, so correct me if I'm not saying this the right way, but you're like, dude, what is wrong with me? I know better, and I've done better. Why? What happened to that person? Have you ever heard of David Metcalf?
I've heard the name.
Okay, so Navy SEAL, 42 years old, documented that decline in his life, and it was severe, and he did wind up taking his own life. And there's a whole foundation started because of that called the Invisible Wounds Foundation. And our foundation, Warrior for Life Fund, that's, kind of who I dedicate my time to. We're partnered and friends with Invisible Wounds. They're based out of Chicago, and they do this wonderful stuff. Anyway, I will connect you with those folks.
Yeah, excited.
But my point is with David Metcalf, that decline was obvious to him. Part of his brain, some reasoning part of his brain said, this is wrong, that recognized it was wrong. And he was so distraught with the way he was.
Dude, when you lose your mind, it's the most. I've been in combat. I was not as scared in combat as I was once my brain stopped working.
Wow.
And I can't describe like it's a constant feeling of anxiety, constant, like just trying to keep up with who you're talking to, what you're talking about. It was like being a child with adult responsibilities, and it's difficult. I say impossible for anybody to understand until it gets better. You can't even realize how bad it is. I'm pumped that we're getting these guys through, because some of them were hurt when they were 19. They grew up with these, a brain that essentially you grew up with Alzheimer's. It's like instant Alzheimer's, and it's terrifying, man. It's the seizures you don't just feel bad about what you do during them. Like, it feels like being tased, you're having a seizure in your head, an electrical explosion of energy that's unchecked, that's running rampant. Random systems are operating. Guys at TBIs, I'm not going to say his name, but like one of the, he's a SEAL around here. He'll look at you, and then his eye like slowly drifts over to you. And if you ask him, he'll tell you he's fine. Well, I know when your eyes are not focused on the same thing, you see two pictures, and you're a SEAL and you just get through it. But like, these tremors that people have. I don't know. I was in the hospital. The guy's right hand just tremored. I know another guy who was nearly blinded just by the blast. That's his only injury. And he's nearly blind, has a seeing eye dog. The damages, it's the most important. The only, there's several organs you can't live without. Your brain is one of them.
Yeah. Your brain controls definitely every other one.
Be top of the list.
Yeah.
So it's guys are scared. They don't know what's going on. They know what's happening, but then, and there's good doctors, there's bad doctors. And then there's some doctors that go, well, you just got to learn to live with it. Oh, well, they can't comprehend that your brain's doing probably 100 billion things a day. And when you lose even 10% of those, that's a billion things, 10 billion things a day that aren't happening.
Yeah.
I argue it's probably more. There's no way to tell, because we can't do this EEG thing on dudes that are 35. When they're 80 and circling the drain and they have Alzheimer's, what's the big deal? We poke a couple holes in the skull and put some EEG leads in there. You're not going to see it. They're asking for proof on a thing that like we can't prove. What I can prove is that nothing we're doing seems to be helping the suicide rate. We're losing more guys every day. And look, this makes sense. We need material. The body can't get it quickly enough. We get it from somewhere else, put it right where it needs to be. Like if a wall falls over, you bring bricks and you build it again. If the bricks don't show up, the guy could have the cement and the trowel and the line and the scaffold and still not be able to build it.
Yeah.
So we have a math problem, and this overcomes the math problem.
Wow. Fascinating discussion overall. Incredible. Quick break here. We'll be right back. And we're back. I am talking to a blastologist, somebody who founded the Blastology Foundation. Is that what you call it?
Yep.
Okay. And Josh Lindstrom, what's next for you?
Oh, yeah, take the bar in February.
Okay.
If I pass the bar, I've applied for 2 retroactive Purple Hearts. Injuries I witnessed personally in one case. In the other one, the guy was in my platoon. Photographs, all that stuff. We submitted their retroactive Purple Heart and they were denied because they had no record of treatment, which is funny because they didn't treat any of the other guys in the truck either, even if they were injured. All the rest of those guys did get Purple Hearts. One of those guys applied for it while he was still in. It was approved by a 2-star and he just never received it.
Wow.
So when you look at like institutional bias,
Yeah.
it is, I basically I took a signed packet, sent it to him, and I demand you send this award to this individual now. So the other two that they've submitted all this evidence, photographs, all these things, and they denied them, will be going to federal court as soon as I pass the bar. And this has been my dream every day. I walked into, law school knowing that I was probably never meant to be there. We'll take those cases to court. I've already done the research, and hopefully get those guys their Purple Hearts, and then comes hopefully a class action for another at least 38,000 that have been treated for blast-related traumatic brain injury but haven't received.
Wow, 38,000 or so. Holy cow!
I think one more, but that's
what a mission.
Numbers most favorable to the government.
Yeah. Okay. What a what a noble mission. And I don't mean that to like blow smoke up your ass. I mean that because I know people who, the same people right? We spent so much time in the same circles in our military careers. People who took their lives, people who are going through the struggle right now, people who have struggled and recovered, people who have tried to recover, tried everything there is, and are still going through the struggle. So I think this is incredible.
Now, there's one more thing now. I need people to hear that. Now, saying that, guys, you check out the website, www.blastology.org. You can contact us. Right now, we're underfunded. All right. So if you're another nonprofit organization that's interested in doing this, I don't care if you give the money to our organization. I'm not trying to pump the numbers up. I want my organization closed in 5 years. I want this treatment to be available. I mean, first line treatment for traumatic brain injury. I'm hoping in 5 years. The evidence is incontrovertible.
Yeah.
It's cheap. It's available. It's non-surgical. We have so many wounded that the only way we could treat them all is with this.
Yeah.
It's all the other stuff for this.
A whole nother line of discussion, and something I'm sure you've researched is, how much is pharma and other traditional medicine going to fight these miracle treatments, stem cells included. This could be why I can't get the stem cell procedure in the U.S. because it works and all the...
I'm happy to be the guy they fight.
Yeah,
You're
good.
Just lucky I show up in the new business suit, not the old one.
That's awesome, man. And like a true warrior, you prepared yourself for the fight. So
I'm ready for this.
Yeah.
I can't. But it's not going to be hard.
Yeah.
I got to walk in and be like, Your Honor, bombs are bad for people, and then they have to prove they aren't. And every stitch of evidence, the amount of money spent by DARPA to develop thermal barracks.
Yeah.
We kill people with overpressure. We know that's why we put the explosives in our bombs.
Yeah.
We know what they do. The physics don't change if it's our explosives or theirs.
Dude, that's incredible. So what a journey. And, let's have you back on down the road and get an update on this because this is critical and affects, hundreds of thousands of people, as you mentioned. This is the Elevate Your Leadership podcast. There's a couple more things. We're going long, man, but I knew we would. And this is too important to not have a complete and thorough discussion. There's two other things I want to touch on. And so before I ask you your definition of the word leadership, I want to talk about the Las Vegas bombing, the Cybertruck, because I know the now former Green Beret, I guess you would call him, or the deceased Green Beret who committed that act. And do you think, first of all, can you tell us a little bit about him, how you know him?
Matt was on my first team. He was with me on 2 deployments, and I was there when he got his Bronze Star with a V. Dude earned it. He probably could have earned it in a couple other engagements because that was the kind of guy he was. I don't know if he had a clinical lack of fear, but maybe diagnosable, because he just wasn't scared of anything. I mean, he was motivated. He was smart. He, through the time I knew him, was always doing something. Went to Thailand to kickbox, played football semi-professionally, I think, even while he was in. Super solid dude. And I don't want to get over my skis on Matt, but as I understand it, he was complaining long before Vegas of his injuries, and that he had started getting treatment recently prior to
TBI type of injury and treatment.
Operator syndrome is the du jour now. Multiple blasts, periods of semi-consciousness, put a charge on a door and you get your knees buckled, wake up 3 rooms in. That's indicative of an injury. And so without knowing a ton about what occurred, I spoke to Matt relatively recently. We stayed in contact. There were no indicators whatsoever. I think that, if you ask me to bet the farm, I'm saying Matt had a seizure when he killed himself.
Yeah. So we're talking about Matt Livelsberger, the driver and the bomber, January 1st in Las Vegas. And so potentially a seizure. There's the other part about that is that was a multi-day operation, if you will. I mean, it was thought out, it was planned out, it was assembled, and then it was executed.
Well, we got 2 scenarios, right? We got the Jason Bourne scenario, and this is the one I hope for, that Matt is doing some sort of clandestine work and killed a bum and put him in that truck.
Yeah.
And I really wanted to believe that at the beginning, but I think we have the other scenario, which is Matt was likely suffering from these seizures.
Mm-hmm.
And then, he talks about a lot of stuff in those letters, and I relate to how those are laid out, because I think one of the things that I, witnessed and experienced at the worst parts of the issues with the traumatic brain injury are you're just kind of picking something and railing about it all day. You know what I mean? And it's just, you can't let go of it.
One particular thing, can't let it go.
Whoever, I can't get this person to write the email back, and just all day. So you look in there, and if the Bourne scenario is not the scenario, I'm in the, Matt was suffering from operator syndrome and likely killed himself during a seizure. You look at a lot of that stuff he's saying, and we got this issue that Matt followed people and was followed professionally. Mm-hmm. So it's not that far off, that could have occurred. I don't know that it did. I suspect that it didn't. And that, Matt was suffering from seizures that make interpreting reality extremely difficult in my experience. And from what I hear from other people, but you see these letters that he wrote, and what I see is a lot of noise. Mm-hmm. And in that noise, the thing that I key on is that Matt wanted to bring awareness to veterans' situations. Mm-hmm. And so if he knew he was suffering and struggling, and that's why he put the fireworks in there. He wanted to he wanted people to see this is what happens. Mm-hmm. That dude came in as an X-ray. He's been a Green Beret for like 19 years.
Yeah.
He's been eating charges. If he's on demo pay for 19 years, that means on 400 and something occasions, if he met the minimum standard, he would have to personally employ an explosive device.
Yeah. Just the minimum to maintain qualification.
Yeah. And we're not talking pre-sephardic deployments.
Yeah.
I was on deployments with him. I blew doors with him.
Yeah.
Those doors, when they blew up, buckled my knees.
Yeah.
Damn near knocked me out on some occasion. You know how it is in combat. Like, 3 rep? No.
Right.
Let's do a 7.
Right.
Just to make sure.
Yeah.
So, I suspect that if you want to look at what Matt was trying to bring visibility to, if it's what I suspect, it's, that we got to find a better way to take care of these guys.
Yeah.
And, I'm super reticent to say something like this on a podcast. Now, as my friend, I don't want to speak out of school on him, but if it's what I think it is, I think we could have saved Matt if he got this treatment. Mm-hmm. I can't guarantee it. I don't know, but the first thing that gave me relief was this treatment.
Yeah. Well, what you can guarantee is without that treatment, he acted out. And also, just following the news, and I don't know, and I didn't really look this up in any great detail, but apparently there were some marital issues or, wife, ex-wife, something like that.
I can't speak on that, but what I can tell you is Green Berets get divorced every day, and we're fine. We're fine,
Yeah, exactly.
Women want us and men want to be just like us, I mean, it's not.
Isn't that a Navy you're saying?
It might be. But I suspect that, Matt was suffering from operator syndrome, that he was likely having seizures that are, difficult to deal with. I don't know that he was having marital strife. And as I lightly hear it through the grapevines, that might not be true.
Okay.
So we have the three criteria. Is there, did he feel like he was going to lose his job?
Mm-hmm.
Did he feel like, he had that thing that I was worried about when I was hurt? Like, is this going to be the time that I lose my job for doing something that, missing a target that I should be able to hit? Like, you don't even get to miss targets. You miss too many and you're gone. And so there was this constant fear that when was the thing that going to happen that would take my job.
Yeah. So, thanks for addressing that. I went on Fox News and I talked about just the mechanics of the device, the chemistry and
that was a whoosh, not a boom.
Yeah, exactly. And the way I put it was a low order, incendiary devices like we talked about earlier, not something not a high order explosive, not a TNT, not a dynamite, not a composition 4, not a composition 2.
Yeah, I know Matt's skill set. If he wanted to blow that place up,
exactly,
it would have been biblical.
Yep, exactly right. So the message he wanted to send, I think there's a lot to that. Thanks for addressing that. Let's go to the last couple of things in your bio. So you are a underperforming golfer and drummer. Let's start with golf because it sounds like
I should be better.
It sounds like you're doing pretty well.
I play. I feel like I should be better, but I'm chronically mediocre. But
have you been golfing since childhood?
Never played on a team or anything. Really got into it in the military. I quit drinking, so that means the TMP is free after the bar at 3. In Poland till noon or 2 the next day. And I would just find the nicest golf course. Everybody loved having me on the team because everybody would give me their money and they'd tell me what they wanted to do and how much they wanted to spend, and I'd keep it all. And I'd drive the TMP, rental truck that we would have on these training things so that we could go out and have a good time. And there was at least one responsible, and then I'd sleep for 3 hours. I'd hang out till 3 a.m, 4 a.m. I'd wake up at 6, go find a golf course in Eastern Europe that's like a PGA Tour course that I pay $50 to go play, and there's nobody there. I just play on a golf course by myself.
That's incredible, man.
So it's I love it as a sport. It's another 90% mental, the other 10% in your head sport. Like it's a reflection of your ability to, like, when something bad happens, not be you got all the distance.
You got to deal with
where it ends up. You can either be like, I hate my life, or you can be like, I got another shot. I'll chip it a putt.
Yeah.
And when I'm able to put myself in that, detached from, result,
right?
Live in the moment, detach myself from the result. And it's so difficult that you can never get good enough at it. You can never hole in 18 times.
Yeah.
So there's always room. It's such a mental, for me, like refuge. And it's been a measure of my injury. I mean, almost you can see the handicap change, as I am measure it. You can see where I got stem cells.
Yeah.
And see that my handicap improved.
Dude, that is such a good point. What a way to measure. Because as I go into my stem cell treatment next month, the entities that are associated with this have asked me to weekly do a video of the same physical task to show improvement, which I'm happy to do, and I know what the physical task is, and it's perfect, and it's going to show that this either worked or it didn't. But to do something like golf and say, is my performance improving? Your capacity for drumming, your your intellect, your motor skill, drumming, and I'm a drummer too, and but I'm worse than underperforming. So if you're underperforming, you're better than me as a drummer.
I've had a drum kit for like 5 years. I was like Steve Martin in The Jerk when I was a kid. My whole family plays instruments.
Yeah.
And I would just be in the corner like,
yeah,
and I just got mad one day. I was like, I'm not gonna take it anymore. So I got, Rock Band, and now I have a nicer electric kit that I play.
Yeah.
In between studying, I play like an hour a day.
That's awesome, dude. It's been probably 5 years since I've played seriously, but it's therapeutic. It's a neuron connector for the brain. Man, it's rehab. Exactly right. And really any instrument is, and they tell you that.
Learning new things.
Yeah, exactly.
That is what, because golf ain't going to work for everybody. Some people get too frustrated.
Yeah.
And I understand that completely.
Whatever ballroom dancing. I learned how to ballroom dance like 6. I did it for a charity, and so I haven't done it since. I never call myself a ballroom dancer, but the process in and of itself was enjoyable. And dude, it stimulated my brain like you wouldn't believe. It made my brain work in ways because you got to coordinate. It's physical and mental coordination with things that you've never done before. My brain tells my feet to move in this direction for a count of 4, and then all of a sudden I got to move in a different direction.
Yeah.
Anyway.
And then you show up late to that step. And then so drumming to me is recovery. That's all it is.
Yeah.
I can, for one measure, I can play something, but if it's fast and then I get behind and then I have to coordinate these things. And so can I move my foot on the kick pedal without making a sound? Because I need to readjust.
Yeah.
I had to learn how to do that.
Yeah.
If I drop a stick, how do I keep the beat? It's not about doing it the right way. It's how can, when the wrong thing happens, I make it sound like
keep
it's
it
not.
going.
Yeah.
Dude, that is so cool. All right. So the biggest question for any drummer, can you play Enter Sandman?
No, I can't.
What songs do you like?
So I play, one of my favorite songs to play is Comfortably Numb by Pink Floyd.
Okay.
It's a very slow, kind of broody jam.
That's cool.
Play a little Tyler Childers, some rockabilly.
Okay.
I like the Rolling Stones. That was the first song I ever learned how to play was not Start Me Up. It's a famous Rolling Stone. I'm forgetting the name of the tune now, but I just pick songs that I think I can play and I just listen to them. And also I have melodics. So I have an electronic kit. It's almost like Rock Band, but it's real songs.
Okay.
So Come Together by the Beatles, like some Lenny Kravitz. It's got all these songs. So it teaches you how to play because I had no idea.
That's cool.
Yeah.
We got to talk more about that.
Yeah.
So, okay. Last 2 questions.
All right.
First one, leadership. This is the Elevate Your Leadership podcast. And although we didn't, dive deep into aspects of leadership, this whole discussion has been a discussion on leadership because you, throughout your military career and in the private sector, you saw shortcomings, you saw flaws, and you're doing something about it in every case. And that's leadership, pure and simple. With that, how do you define the word?
I'll use the military's definition, and then add my own 2 cents. But leadership is getting people to do what must be done. All right. In that, I would say that I hate the term leadership has its privileges. It is a privilege to be a leader.
No doubt.
If you are a leader where I'm from, that means you might not be the fastest runner. You might not be the best shooter. You're the best at something. But you are the first one to be there. You're the last one to leave. You're the one that cares. It's almost a competition. When I was in selection, we would fight. We had to push Jeeps with poles that we attached to them, but we couldn't sit inside it, and we had to pull it with a rope and everything. We would fight over who had to sit in the driver's seat to steer because it was the easiest position. Leadership isn't, I'm the one in charge. Yes, you are in charge, but you're not in charge of what everybody's doing. They are in charge of it while they're doing it. You give them their task. But people get so attached to being the one to hand out tasks.
Mm-hmm.
That is where leadership, real leadership, where you can delegate to somebody who knows more than you.
For sure.
And I love combat because I can't see around that corner.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know where the target is. Should I be the one calling the mortars or should it be you? Good leaders I've had have said, you do it. Bad leaders I've had have said, I'll do it.
Absolutely.
And there is,
absolutely.
Yeah, you have to know when to.
Dude, that's a quote. I've got to write that one down. Keep talking.
You know, I'm going to redesign military leadership here, which I know is a big step, but I don't think you should be able to come in the military as an officer. I think at E5, you should go to a board and they say, you have proven yourself as a leader and you are going to go be an officer. You have education, blah, 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 or we're going to get you the education because your peers, your leadership believes that you have what it takes. Or you are a hands-on type of NCO. You're going to be a warrant officer or an NCO, or bring back the specialist ranks that we had in the military, non-technical, non-leadership positions that go all the way up to Spec 9. So you keep getting your raises, but we don't put people in leadership positions that don't belong there, because bad leadership equals dead people in that business. And I've had the best, I've had the best leadership, I think, available in the military from some of the bravest, some of the smartest, most dedicated, wily, cunning, dangerous, but friendly and nice people you'll ever meet in your life. And their leadership methods are not in any books. Non-performance is met with ridicule. You say that and people get nervous right away. That's what we did. If you screwed something up, you were hoping that somebody else would screw something up so they'd stop making the jokes about you, but we didn't write it down.
Right.
We didn't fire you. I've rarely seen people fired. And when they did get fired, it was for cause.
For sure.
The things that I saw people get fired for were loyalty issues.
Yeah.
Not lack of performance.
For sure.
They were looking for greener pastures without recognizing the things that have been sacrificed for them.
Yeah, self-interest, ego and self-interest.
Not underperformance.
Yeah.
We took the underperforming guys,
right.
And had a great team.
But yeah, moral and ethical character, man, that's what it's all about. That's what we hire for here. I have 40 people on this team, and when we do an interview, we're interviewing for moral and ethical character. We'll teach you the skill.
Yeah, you can learn. Do you want to learn?
Yeah, exactly.
That's who we need.
Yep.
And the biggest, so I do a talk on resilience that I'd love to do more often. It's, how I look to raise money for the nonprofit. But my main message there, and I gave this talk to a bunch of highfalutin financial managers, my message is humility. And they were like, what? Humility? Like, you go, oh, you're a Green Beret. I thought you were going to come in here with imaginary lat syndrome.
Your chest.
Tell us how it is.
Yeah.
I'm on a team with 11 dudes that can whoop my ass from tiddlywinks to volleyball. You know what I mean? We compete and everything's a competition.
Yep.
Everything we do the very best we can, because it's a culture of not having to do it twice, not having time to do it twice. So we just do everything, as good as it can be done, knowing that if we don't do it that way, if we don't compete, if we're not sometimes last, you got to know that you're not going to be great at everything, and that, humility. I love to use the example of sports figures. So Roger Federer won 84% of his tennis matches. He only won 52% of his points. All right, I haven't done the math on Michael Jordan, but every time he scored 2 points, they went and scored 2 points. You have to know. Tiger Woods hit the fairway 66% of the time in 2000, the year after he won 9 majors, I believe. I think I got that right. Just more than half the time. He hit the fairway, the biggest part of the golf course. Your target's 4 inches. The fairway is 100 yards. He hit it half the time. Guys who know, leaders who know that half the time you're going to get your ass kicked. You plan for getting your ass kicked half the time. The decisions we make are so complex, they're so convoluted, that we can't ensure success, because we might do something for the right reason and have a horrible result, do something for the wrong reason and have a great result. So it's hard to even assess, but I think that, and this is partially a religious belief, but I believe God is so benevolent that he just says, you just got to beat chance, guys. I've done things thinking that I was doing the right thing and finding out years later, so long I can't even associate it with why I made the decision that turned out horribly. So you don't even know, if your decisions are going to work out the way that you hope they will, you run through an area that's beaten with machine gun fire, you might make it, you might not. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Small margins of error produce huge variations in end result. And we just got to know where you're going to get your ass kicked half the time as a leader, as an individual. And that humility of knowing that builds resilience to the beating you're going to take.
Yeah. Dude, I love that. I absolutely love that. Sun Tzu said, in war, prepare for peace, and in peace, prepare for war. Prepare to have your ass kicked because it's going to happen.
I know we're running a little long here. Last thing on this. Interested to find out, as I was in combat, I repeatedly pictured my death. It's why I didn't vote when I was in the service, because I didn't want my last thought to be like, man, I should have voted for somebody else. And this was something I found out later that samurais would do. They would picture every way they could die in combat so that they weren't surprised by it. And in picturing those deaths, I pictured all the ways in which my failures could result in my death or somebody else's death. And so that ties into kind of this, there's a culture around this imposter syndrome that everybody wants to talk about. My message, and I don't know if this coordinates with yours, I'm sure you've talked about it at some point on a leadership podcast, but I hope you feel imposter syndrome. I hope you feel like you're not good enough. You're not. Nobody is. We need to know that we're not, even if we do everything we can, we still might let those around us down, and that we should picture every way we can fail so that our reflexes don't betray us in that moment of truth, so that, it's like in Band of Brothers, Blythe. I don't know if you remember the guy. He was like, you're already dead, Blythe. And once you figure, I know that's a McBar, way to look at it, but, a brother just died recently, unexpectedly. I didn't get to say goodbye to him. We don't know, your ticket's punched. It's why I still ride a motorcycle, and I know I shouldn't, because if I bump my head again and I got to go through all that again, I don't know if I'm going to make it. That was not fun.
Yeah.
But we don't know, when it's going to end. So we have to be ready for everything that comes at us, and with humility and gratitude, for the good and the bad, because sometimes the worst is what makes the best. And I believe, I'm not convinced about what I'm doing. I'm convicted. This is what I have to do, because I know what my friends are going through. And for a long time, I felt like I was being punished by God. Like, for all my many, you could pick anything. There's a bunch of reasons that you could smack the crap out of Josh and be like, yeah, he deserved that. But what I realized is that I think that I was injured and allowed to heal so that I can describe it to other people, and that I can, help some guys that are going through some really bad stuff. And if that's what it costs, I'm okay with it. Like, that's, I feel like
you found your calling, man, or your addiction. You found it. That's awesome. Hey, Josh, I absolutely love this. You have enriched me today, more than I can tell you, and there'll be follow on. But more importantly, I hope listeners are thinking of people, combat veterans and others who are in need, and refer them to this podcast. And let's give people the help we need. And we have a new administration in place, and it's really time to tackle veteran suicide and some of the other things that ail veterans and other people within our society. Josh, thanks so much. And let's, one more time, how can people get a hold of you?
Josh@blastology.org is my email. You can go to the website, blastology.org. We have a contact link there. If you are right now, if you're a special operations veteran, I can help you do a benevolent request to get this treatment. I'm working on funding. If you are somebody with funding, I'm selling human lives, whole human life. I can get you, and not just any old human life, or the kind that, I feel like deserves, as much help as we can get. It's a fraction of the cost of other treatments. We need about $11,000 to treat an individual right now, $11,000 to treat two. I don't know how long that'll last. So we're taking donations. Please get a hold of me. If you were injured in combat, you were knocked unconscious by enemy or friendly forces, get a hold of me. We're kind of on a pause right now until I can get into court, because the military is not responding very well to this. we'll do what we can. I'll try and help you guys get funded for this treatment, the best of my ability. There are other organizations that can fund it. And if you're somebody who knows Pete Hegseth or the new VA secretary, guys, let me sell it. I have the only method that could possibly fix as many as are wounded. So, reach out. I'll do what I can.
Website, email address, one more time.
Email address is josh@blastology, blastology.org. And then blastology.com is the website.
Blastology.com. Josh Lindstrom, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Elevate Your Leadership podcast. To contact Bob directly or to learn more about how Bob can advance you and your organization through leadership training, team building, executive coaching, and public speaking, visit robertpizzini.com. Robert, Pizzini.com, and connect with him on LinkedIn.